Most likely because she's never seen a Ukrainian prostitute receive a bukkake shower from a gang of cracked-out Albanian teens.
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. Welcome to it. The number, if you want, get on the air on broadcast radio and online at the same time, is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian and Bonnie here in the Keene side, Keene, New Hampshire, where our studio is, and then also with us from Mexico City.
It's me, Mark, Mexico City.
Mark
Yay.
is here. He's going to probably get some extra time on the air with us over the next couple of weeks because today marks the beginning of ForkFest, and the Porcupine Freedom Festival will start on Monday. So ForkFest is the event that is the decentralized alternative to the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And the Porcupine Freedom Festival is the largest libertarian event, I think, on the planet at this point. Now, that title used to belong to Anarchapulco, and I think that it has...
And Freedom Fest.
Yeah, I mean, I would call Freedom Fest more of a conservative leaning event than a libertarian event. But I would say it was like half and half.
It's a libertarian event that they've opened up to anybody who's interested in paying the much larger entrance fee. Right? There's a difference between a convention event and a camping festival as far as costs and things like that. So, it's very different. But to use the term event is broad. So I can't think of another event that I would call libertarian, besides those three that you mentioned.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a ton of libertarian events out there. I mean, you've got one coming up in October that you're going to with the Free Cities Foundation in Prague. There's, I don't know, at least a handful of libertarian camping festivals that happen in the United States across a year. There's Jackalope Fest out in Arizona. There's, I think, Midwest Fest or something up in Wisconsin or Michigan, or maybe it moves around. I don't know. There's, of course, the Libertarian Party that has their events all over the place. They've got their own convention that they do, but that's usually, I think, like 1,000 people at the National Libertarian Convention. So if you start to look at events with over 2,000 attendees, then I think you whittle it down to Anarchapulco, at least in the past. I don't know if its current iterations are reaching those levels. And then, of course, Freedom Fest, which, I mean, I get what you're saying. I think your argument, Mark, is that the event's organizers are libertarian. And certainly not everyone who attends the Porcupine Freedom Festival is a libertarian.
Certainly not.
Yeah, but, you have been to Freedom Fest a bunch of times. I went once in 2019 with you, right before, the end of the world with COVID. And it
was the one with Trump?
No, it felt like 50-50 to me. That was the one where Glenn Beck was interviewing the gentleman Penn Jillette on stage at the end. That was like the big event, and that was back when Penn Jillette called himself a libertarian. So at least there was that. Since then, he's decided he's apparently a Democrat and Joe Biden supporter.
Well, many people have gone to either side with these two crooked old perverts that we seem to be choosing between for president here.
Yeah, it's really sad what happened with Penn Jillette.
I mean, I can understand why somebody says, "Look, Joseph Stalin is running on the other side. I have to vote for Hitler," right? Or it's Adolf freaking Hitler. Of course, I'm voting for Joe Stalin. Right? I get why they do it. It's just that. You look at voting a different way, and it's a fair way to look at it. Your vote is mathematically insignificant. You might as well apply it in a way that makes you feel good.
Yeah, but the difference, though, is that he went out of his way, and actually Teller along with him, to make a video endorsing Joe Biden and talking about, why he's not a libertarian anymore. So it wasn't just
fallen
that
into
he
that
was
other trap. There's another trap there, right? There's the influencer trap that I have to consider the lives of all of my fans out there and choose the person who's right for all of them, as if right? And as if it's your business. But I could say, look, my on-air presence is very important, so I've decided to endorse Who's What's It for this particular office, even though I personally would, vote for Aaron Day or whatever.
Well, are you talking about Penn Jillette? Because he went way further than that. He was like, Joe Biden is love. Joe Biden is going to unite the country with his love and embrace.
Right. I don't know. I mean, it seems like you're speculating here, Mark. I don't know if you actually heard the statement that that he made. It was a very disappointing thing to hear after.
I wasn't exaggerating. Like, that's actually the type of things he was saying.
If you're going to manipulate people, you have to use over-the-top stuff, right? I mean,
that's just sad. This is a person who used to identify as a libertarian. Now, whether he was ever the most principled libertarian or not, I think you could call that into question. But he, at the very least, was putting that brand out there in a.
I'd be curious what he intends to do after there's 4 years of love in the office.
yeah, that is an interesting question to see if he regrets his decision. I don't know. And he's the one libertarian or former libertarian that we were never able to book for this show.
And it's true, we were never able to do it. And the one time I tried to give him a business card, and he was acting like I was going to shoot him or something.
That's weird.
He was very nice when I met him in Vegas, though. So we were talking about the different liberty events out there. Are you going to Freedom Fest this year, Mark?
No, I'm not going to. I'm just not ready to begin my real estate project in Honduras, and I want to focus on that. I can be prepared to offer people an interesting alternative, at least for the winter.
But you're going to the one in Prague, right?
That's my intention.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, that one's later on this year. That's October 14th and 15th, and that is the free
relationship there. Yeah, the relationship there is a little bit different. They, they're asking me way ahead of time, and I'm involved in the group and things like that. Whereas Freedom Fest is like, sure, come on,
Oh, sorry, I thought you said
we'll give you a free booth.
I thought Ian had asked you, are you going to any Freedom Fests? So I was like, yeah, you are.
No, Freedom Fest, the one that happens actually used to be Vegas only, and now I think they're changing it up every other year.
They're in Memphis.
Memphis this year. Okay.
Excellent job clarifying, though. Thank you, Bonnie.
Yeah, that is important. So if you want to join the show, the number here is 603-283-6160. Of course, you can bring up absolutely anything you want. In the news today, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, including apparently an alleged hack attack against the Western banking systems, which we can definitely talk about. And, of course, your calls and thoughts about whatever is on your mind. But we were just discussing the Freedom Festivals, and I think that the Porcupine Freedom Festival has taken the mantle. Like, even if you include Freedom Fest in there, which is probably a very, very large event. I mean, over 2,000 attend Freedom Fest. And, obviously, every event took a hit in the year 2020. In some cases, they couldn't even find a venue in 2020. And to PorcFest's credit, it actually continued. PorcFest was probably the only freedom event that happened in the year 2020. So, and I would say several hundred attendees, maybe even close to 1,000 in that particular year. And then the next year, 2021, it spiked up and sold out, which was more than 2,000 tickets. The year after that, 2022, it sold out again, and they'd increased the number of tickets up to like
3,000, right?
3,000 or something like that.
And that was the only year I've been, 2021.
Right, we went up for 1 day.
2022, sorry, and it was so many people. It was like a little town of libertarians.
Yeah, unfortunately, we could only go for 1 day last year, and this year we're going to go also for maybe 2 days this year, because the feds are forcing me to drive up every day. They're not saying I can't go, but they're saying I just can't stay the night. I can't have a quote-unquote sleepover with my friends, unquote, according to the prosecution
in
their objection.
Supposed to be allowed to do work.
Correct.
And it's definitely work.
Yeah, it's not a vacation at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. It is a working event. We are there recording. When I'm there, we're there recording every single day, and that's why I started the show out by saying that maybe Mark is going to be joining us a little bit more often over the next couple weeks, because right now, we've got some hosts that are going to be attending the Porcupine Freedom Festival, but they're not there as like full-time broadcasters. It's not their responsibility to, stop the party every day so they can do a 3-hour radio show. So what we're expecting to happen is we'll have some shows from Forkfest and Porkfest. We don't know how many there will be. It's possible they'll get on a roll and crank out, more than one show in a row, or it may be like, every 3 days we get a full show after they do an hour a day or something like that. So I don't know what to expect out of it. So we'll find out. But that's what's going to be going on over the next couple weeks. And of course, almost everybody from the Liberty community in New Hampshire, everybody who's not working every single day and can't like get away from their career is going to be at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And apparently a lot of people are already at Forkfest, which of course is the decentralized alternative. And that's an event that started in 2017. So this is, I believe, year number 7 of the, or was that last year? Of the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Anyway.
Wait, number 7?
No, of the Forkfest.
Sorry, Forkfest. Thank you. Yeah. I believe it's year number 7.
Well, I'm just glad that there'll be a lot of witnesses to Arya's shooting.
What do you mean by that?
He thinks that Maj Toure is going to shoot Arya.
Well, first of all, Maj Toure threatened to assault the person who was doing Drag Queen Story Hour in quote unquote.
Well, then
his community.
when people said there will be a million people with guns there, he said, "What's that supposed to mean? I have a sub-second draw."
Oh, okay. Well, I think maybe he was referring to that he would defend himself with a gun against a gun. I don't know if he was saying he was going to shoot the person that was doing Drag Queen Story Hour. I guess you could extrapolate shoot someone from the word assault. It technically, I suppose, would be an assault, a deadly assault in that particular case. But
if it was I guess what I'm thinking is that conservatives are higher on the honor spectrum, right? And if a conservative says they're going to do something, expect it. Right?
I wouldn't believe a conservative who says they're going to do anything any more than anyone else.
Yeah, like conservatives are the ones that are like, our schools are pedophiling our children, and then they continue sending their kids to public school in most of the country.
Yeah, they're full of it. They're just puffing themselves up just like a big tough guy. I don't believe it for a moment.
Fine, if somebody threatens something, I believe them. Okay. And if I don't understand why the Porcupine Freedom Festival would, either they had a little talking to old Maj, or they just don't care.
So what apparently happened, according to the lengthy discussion we had with Dennis Pratt a couple weeks ago, if you want to catch that episode, it was a Saturday night show. It must be like a week and a half now at this point. But he explained, and I don't think this is a acceptable explanation, but just to say what he said that he had a lengthy conversation with Maj on the phone, and that Maj made it clear that this was only to be considered a threat if they were forcing children to read sexual material.
Okay.
So that was...
Because I believe Arya did make some silly statement like that too initially.
She did, and then she walked it back in a subsequent comment saying she was going to read Tuttle Twins books or something like that.
Tuttle Twins is excellent stuff. I have, we had the whole set, I believe, at my house. We may have sent those to friends. I can't remember whether Jack still has them or not.
I think it was actually Bonnie who made that statement without walking it back. I think Bonnie said that she was going to read sexually explicit material to people's children, but of course with the parental consent.
I said I was going to give sexual education classes to kids, but I don't really want to, and I never really wanted to. Mm-hmm. It was just the point, and it's not that I was lying or trolling in that case. It's just that Ian didn't get permission to go to Porkfest, so why would I schedule an event?
Mm. Well, I am glad something did come about from all of this controversy, because Bonnie was the original. Something? Arya is going to have an event. So originally it was just Bonnie who was trolling, and very successfully trolling against Maj Toure and his fanatic base, who, when Toure had said that he was going to assault anyone in, quote, his community that did a Drag Queen Story Hour, and then continued to back up his statement with further statements, Bonnie made the statement that, well, you better not come to New Hampshire's Porcupine Freedom Festival, where, of course, he is expected to be a paid speaker, because we're going to be having a ton, I believe was the term, of drag queen story hours all across Rogers Campground.
Yeah, but,
and he then quote tweeted you, I believe.
Well, one thing to clarify, don't say that I said you better not come, because that's what Dennis Pratt tried to say that I said, and that it was a counter threat. And I didn't say that.
The impression that Ian doesn't really listen to what Bonnie says and just kind of takes some stuff that other people say and applies it to Bonnie. I mean, I remember the court case where Ian's like, nope, there wasn't any glass in the shoes. I mean, I listened to Bonnie talk about glass in her shoes for 45 minutes in the same room as Ian.
Oh, Ian? Oh, Ian does this. I thought you were talking about Dennis Pratt. Yeah, Ian does do it. Ian does do it too. He doesn't always listen to all the things I say. Just kidding, Ian. But,
How long have you guys been married? Not even a year?
Not all of them, but a lot of times. Anyways, well, Dennis Pratt was the one that did that in this case, and he said that I said you better not come to PorcFest, but I didn't actually say that. I said, well, then you might not want to go to PorcFest. So I just want to clarify that, because Dennis Pratt tried to use that as, some people said that I should ban you, Bonnie, for counter-threatening him, and that's just absolutely ridiculous.
So anyway, that particular statement you made about doing a drag queen story hour, or a ton of drag queen story hours at PorcFest, went viral essentially, and blew up. There was all kinds of response to it. But the sad part was that like you said, you don't really want to do a drag queen story hour. You're not going to dress in drag. And you weren't planning the event. It wasn't really going to be an event. And I thought it really should be, because the Porcupine Freedom Festival, this would not be the first time drag queens were on the Rogers Campground for the Porcupine Freedom Festival. In fact, I recalled, and Jay Freeville backed me up on this, and he is an expert on these things, a longtime PorcFest attendee who's usually in our chat room over at chat.freetalklive.com. He backed me up.
Doxing him.
No, everybody knows Jay. He backed me up on this, because there was one year where they had, at least one year, maybe it was more than once, but there was one year for the Buzz's Big Gay Dance Party, which already had conservatives in a tizzy years ago. At the Big Gay Dance Party, they brought in actual drag queens from Boston. We imported some drag queens, and they put on like a little drag show at the Big Gay Dance Party. Now, one could argue, well, Big Gay Dance Party was a private event. It was in a large tent, and you had to be over 18 or with your parents' permission, etc., to attend the Big Gay Dance Party. However, the drag queens did absolutely walk around the PorcFest campus. They're hungry. They got to go and get some food, right? Like, so you got to go to the bathroom. There's places you got to go before you're going to go into the Big Gay Dance Party and or after the Big Gay Dance Party. So it's not like they weren't seen by other people. It's not like children didn't see drag queens at Rogers Campground. And the discussions we were having were...
Well, I think the drag queens are pretty mild compared to the guy that wore the loincloth one year, and there's been a couple of topless gals just wandering around.
Oh, there's straight up naked people there now.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, Mark.
Well, I mean, do you kind of see the issue that conservatives have here? So let me encapsulate it. Here's a statement. The statement is that any place, whether that's virtual or real, that is not explicitly hostile to the left will be taken over by it.
No, I think that's ridiculous. It's like Alex Weed, he called in and he said, basically, we all believe in the non-aggression principle, but would you agree that we could have higher principles? That should be the base, and then we can all have higher principles than that? And
absolutely.
I think that other people can have those, but I don't think that we need to agree on them. Like, I don't think that Alex and I need to have the same exact identical principles. As long as we agree with the non-aggression principle, I can be around him. And if he's doing something I don't agree with, I can ignore it. Right. If he's dragging me into it, then I could be able to defend myself against him.
Yeah, that's the thing. Where the conservative view that you expressed there, Mark, comes from is the fear that If my
it's freaking normal reality.
Okay, but it's fear.
If you have a website that isn't explicitly hostile to liberal ideas, you will be taken over.
That's stupid.
That's crazy. I mean, Twitter.
Welcome to Facebook, Instagram. Like Twitter is
well, our site's doing fine. Social.freetalklive.com. You can go there and you can find that that's not true.
They are explicitly hostile people.
Yeah, but not leftists.
You can hit the block button
for one thing, and for one thing, if I could say the same exact thing about conservatives. Like anytime I tweet, it's gone down a lot less, but whenever I made that comment to Maj Touré, it was like anytime I tweeted, I was getting like, okay groomer, and like
so
they also do the same thing. If I wanted to say that the same exact thing you said, I could bring up these anecdotal experiences like the same way you're doing, Mark, and say, well, conservatives will take over.
I'm telling you that
you said like, look at Facebook. I can probably get someone who says that their Facebook is overrun with conservatism. I mean, when I had a Facebook, it was
a hard leftist.
I'm not a hard leftist.
I had a guy just blame the economic downturn on Reaganomics 2 days ago on Facebook. So anything can happen there.
That's an anecdote. Also, when I go on Twitter, like it is absolutely overrun with conservatism, and also the chat rooms that Ian brought up about the Free Talk Live ones. I almost feel like that the conservatives sometimes are like feds, just paid to make Free Talk Live look like a conservative land. It's so conservative in there.
Well, I think Mark is saying that is the hostility he's talking about. He's saying that keeps the liberals out, being nasty.
So what's better about keeping the nasty liberals out than the nasty conservatives?
Let's not read anything into what I said. What I said was any space, whether that space is virtual or real, that is not explicitly hostile to the left will be taken over by it.
I just don't understand why you think that, but you can't understand that I could say any space that is not explicitly hostile to conservatives will be taken over by it.
Well, no, I think that any space that conservatives are hostile, right? So they can keep their own little spaces until they get banned by the companies that run them, because at some point or another they'll turn into bigots.
She's making the same point you are.
Twitter is an example of what I'm saying. Twitter was run over by leftists, and then when what's his name went in there and took their ability
made it explicitly hostile.
He didn't make it explicitly hostile to leftists. They can still
they see
exist
free
there.
Speech as explicitly hostile.
I don't think so.
What he did was he opened up, unbanned a lot of people who were banned, and seemed to loosen the restrictions on posting.
It stopped being explicitly hostile to conservatives.
Correct.
And then got ran over by them. So I'm saying the same thing you are.
When there's a list of places that go from moderate or moderate left to hard right because the conservatives overrun it, I'd be happy to talk about that list. All I'm doing is repeating an idea that I have read on the internet that seemed to be reasonably well backed.
Okay, Christianity.
All right, we got more coming up here in
right.
moments. The number is 603-283-6160. You can join us, conservative versus liberal, on the internet. It's Free Talk Live.
Excuse me, is this where I get a license to start a new business?
I wouldn't be hasty. You have to get a license to go out of business, too, you know.
Oh, well, look, I've invented this little anti-gravity machine, see?
Oh, is that why you're walking 2 inches above the floor?
Oh, yes, it's very comfortable. It saves on shoe leather.
Yeah, well, you have to fill out these forms and report to the Human Services Department of Manpower Orientation and register with the Fair Employment Practice Commission, the Wage and Hour Division of the Employment Standards Administration, the State Sales and Income Tax Division, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and, of course, OSHA.
OSHA? I thought that was a little town in Wisconsin.
You'll find out. Say, floating around like that could be dangerous. Have you checked with the Consumer Product Safety Commission?
Well, not yet.
Come to think of it, you actually are flying, aren't you? Look, you need to go over to the Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation...
It's very hard to get anything done these days if you're in business, but free enterprise built this country. Think what could happen if we don't keep it free. A public service of this station and the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise, Bellevue, Washington.
Besides, we just can't have people floating about unregulated, you know.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow. The Greek government has declared 3 days of national mourning for the victims of a migrant boat sinking. At least 78 people died after a packed fishing boat capsized about 50 miles off the coast of Greece on Wednesday. Giles Gibson has more from Rome.
As Greek authorities announced a period of mourning, search and rescue teams were still hunting for survivors. But with every hour that passes, the chances of finding people alive in the open sea gets smaller and smaller. Officials say the boat, which had set off from the coast of Libya, declined assistance from the Greek Coast Guard because it was trying to reach Italy. The Greek government has previously been accused of pushing migrant boats back from its waters, though it says its policies are tough but fair.
Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been found guilty of deliberately and repeatedly misleading Parliament. The long-awaited findings were published in a report by a group of MPs over the Partygate scandal, where social gatherings were held in Downing Street during the pandemic lockdowns, as John Beaver now reports from the UK.
The report comes at the end of an investigation into the former Prime Minister's knowledge of and involvement in a number of parties that took place in Downing Street. When they happened, they were in breach of the government's own strict pandemic guidelines put in place to limit the spread of COVID-19. The recommendation to suspend Mr Johnson from Parliament for an unprecedented 90 days can't be enforced as he stepped down as an MP last week, having been given an early private copy of the report. He's called it a political assassination, a witch hunt, and has criticised the report's authors, his own Conservative Party, and current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
The head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog has visited the Zaporizhzhia power plant. Rafael Grossi's visit comes after the recent dam burst in the area and the increased counteroffensive by Ukrainian forces. The IAEA chief says the situation at the power plant is serious, but the measures are being taken to stabilise the situation. Jody Jacobs reports.
Since the start of the war, the International Atomic Energy Agency has repeatedly expressed concern about Zaporizhzhia amid fears of a potential nuclear catastrophe, as the plant has repeatedly been caught in the crossfire. And when the Kakhovka dam collapsed last week, it added a new concern, as the water is used to cool the plant's reactors. Grossi is hoping to get clarity on some of the agency's safety concerns during his visit.
The United Nations Secretary-General says he's very worried about where the world stands in its fight against climate change. Addressing the media at UN headquarters on Thursday, Antonio Guterres said countries are far off track in meeting climate promises and commitments. From bureaus worldwide, this is...
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join the show here, and you can bring up what you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian, Bonnie, and Mark join you tonight. And you can join us online, of course, over at freetalklive.com. I mentioned our chat room. We have a bunch of them, actually. There's an entire chat server, as a matter of fact, over at chat.freetalklive.com. It is what they call a matrix server. And that means that that you have actually the control to create your own chat room. So it's different than Discord. A lot of websites or a lot of groups are using Discord out there, people in the crypto world, the video gaming world. And we used to use Discord, but we knew it was probably not going to last forever, given that it was a centrally controlled corporation. They got all kinds of ridiculous rules. And we
were the largest libertarian chat room on Discord.
That's true. And of course, the more people you have, the more trouble you attract. And so it wasn't long before they got rid of us. And the Matrix, of course, no one can get rid of us. We're running our own server. So as long as we want to keep doing it, we can keep doing it, which is cool. And
as anybody you want to block, you can block. You can have the experience you choose to have, unless that experience is controlling the speech of others.
Correct. And you can even create your own room and make it a private room and invite the people that you like in there. Because if you were to create a public room, then any old troll can come in. But if you create a private room and you find somebody you like, or you invite your friends on there, then no one even knows that it exists. So head over to...
I created Mark Edge's Freedom Kingdom on there, and people are in there. They don't do much, but they used to.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter if you say what the name of the room is. If they don't have the link to join, they're not going to be able to get in. So check it out over at chat.freetalklive.com. You get the step-by-step instructions. I want to come back to the conservatives versus liberals in spaces on the internet, taking over, keeping others out. I think that's an interesting conversation to have. But also, and then we can come back around to the Freedom Festivals, which is what spawned that conversation, because ForkFest has, well, ForkFest never has an official beginning or an ending, but a lot of people were showing up today. Some people were showing up earlier this week, apparently, for it. So we can talk about all those things and more, including the Punisher being taken down as a Marvel property and other things here tonight. But let's go first to Skeeter on the line in California. Go ahead, Skeeter.
Hey, guys. In particular, hey, Bonnie.
Hi.
I just want to start out. Hey. I just want to start out by, I want to apologize for the last time. I didn't want to make it seem like I didn't want to debate you. It's just that you tend to steer me in a different way, and I really called in for Mark's opinion. I forgot to say it was addressed to Mark because he gives me straight answers, and I didn't want to get on a tangent. And
okay,
so,
well, this isn't really an apology, and also I
yeah,
don't
you
think
kind of
it's
went into an
relevant,
insult
so
there.
You can just go ahead and ask a question
yeah,
or
if you've got
say
a question
your
for
idea
Mark,
you have.
Go ahead with it.
Okay. I'm sorry, yeah, I put that a different way. Okay, so first off, I wanted Mark to settle a quick debate we had yesterday with Bonnie. I just said quickly, just something like, Bonnie misrepresented government, that, government does protect some rights sometimes.
And I asked you for an example of that, and you said you couldn't give one, and that was the entire conversation.
Yeah, because it
sounds like typical Skeeter. You ask him to nail him down on something, and he just can't answer the question.
No. It's something kind of self-evident, right?
I think it was.
Mark. So I want to put this to Mark. I wanted Mark to settle it, right? Is there an instance where cops stop an in-progress robbery or deter crime? That's kind of protecting rights.
But
right?
can I just say something really fast, because
he's he's trying to recount
he's
something
acting
you
like
said.
I said that has never happened ever, and I didn't say that. And in fact, I think it was Nikki that pointed out. I'm sure it's happened. Anyways, it's more incidental than anything. I mean, me and Nikki both said this kind of thing.
Why?
I'm sure
we can
that
have non-governmental cops, okay?
And that's the main thing we started talking about, because he can't have that conversation. He just wants to say something and go gotcha, so your whole philosophy is wrong, and he can't even back up what he's saying. I was like,
right.
Okay, just give me an instance, and let's talk about it. Give me an instance of a time that the cops helped someone, and let's talk about it.
Well, surely there are instances of that.
I'm not saying there's not.
But the fact is, the market can provide protection services far better, likely, than the government can. I thought you were a market anarchist.
Yeah, but all I said was sometimes government protects rights.
And we said, yeah,
What's
sure.
the point of
Who cares?
what you're saying?
Yeah, you're obviously trying to get some kind of point across, and you're not making any kind of point. You said I misrepresented government by saying that they have never protected someone's rights, and I said, I'm sure they have. You can't give an example of it, but I'm sure they have, but it wasn't on purpose, or it was ancillary to the reason that they left the cop office to begin with.
Even if they do protect someone's rights, you have to also remember they violated that person's rights in order to quote-unquote protect them later on. They violated their rights by threatening them if they don't pay for the government services, whether they want them or not. So everybody is constantly being violated, having their rights violated by the state in order to get their wonderful protection services, which, of course, as we know, they have no obligation whatsoever to provide you with. They have no obligation to provide it at all.
My experience in Keene, New Hampshire is that the police did everything but say, we have withdrawn your protection because you talk to the Free Staters. To me, they did everything but that. They were terrible. They were terrible under a variety of circumstances. I had my car vandalized one time because it was out at Ian's house. Some lunatic threatened my son. They didn't want to do anything. Nope, we're not gonna do anything. You guys don't believe in police. Wait, pal. I didn't say anything like that. You're just lumping me in with other groups. Should we hold the Keene Police Department responsible for something that every cop in the nation has done? Because that's a little unfair. Should we do it for every police officer in Keene? Every police officer in Keene is, Sergeant Rivera or whatever it is, the Sheriff Rivera, the guy that shot somebody in the back.
Skeeter, go ahead.
Yeah, so the reason why I brought that up, that government sometimes protects rights, sometimes is because Bonnie mischaracterized government as only always violating rights. That's all. That's it.
Well, you're still wrong.
Congratulations.
You're still wrong because it's not a mischaracterization. They're
right,
always
because they are
violating rights.
always violating people's rights, even if, on the other hand, at some point they happen to save somebody at some point from something. Because they were funded by violation of rights.
And one thing that happened yesterday was whenever I said, give me an example of a time it happened, and at first he's like, oh, I don't have to do that. Then he was like, okay, I'm sure there's been a time where a cop has stopped a theft. And I really don't believe that there's been a time. I sincerely don't believe that you could find a time that a cop stopped a theft in progress.
It's probably pretty rare.
They come after the fact.
Yeah, it's usually later on.
But either way, it
well,
wasn't.
That's kind of the definition of it. But I have had a situation where I had a little one of those storage units. I lost some stuff out of there, and the police, caught the guy, found the stuff, and almost all of it was returned.
Sure, that's after the fact.
Yep, it is.
That's it. That's all. I wasn't making any case government's more efficient at thing, but I don't know why she challenged me on it. And
because you were wrong, and you're still wrong.
Peace.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because she's mad at you, and you've done a poor job of apologizing. You continue to call in, referencing things that have occurred in the past.
Yep.
When
we've talked to him about that. Yeah.
About that. Like there's people listening right now who have gotten in their car in Peoria, Illinois, and they're listening to the station that they listen to Sean Hannity on, or Rush Limbaugh reruns, or whatever, and they're hearing the show for the first time, and you're here referencing things that happened 3 days ago, 4 days ago, things like that. And I get that they're very relevant to you, but they're not relevant to the listener. So as coaching to anybody who calls, what we would prefer is that you talk about something in a new fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's always
something fresh.
All the problems are the same problems that humans have had since they developed speech, right? But referencing things that occurred in the past, just it's stale.
Yeah. Hey, Skeeter, thanks for the call tonight. The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Maybe he'll take you seriously, Mark, but he didn't the first time. So
if you thank him for his call, you'll just encourage him.
Well, I got a little scolding for you, Ian, if you'd like to hear it.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So having called into Free Talk Live a few times in the past couple of years as a caller as opposed to a person on the air, I can say that sometimes my experience as a caller has left me wishing, unhappy, right? And one of my thoughts is that, and this is just a thought, is that when people have an unhappy experience, the vast majority of them won't do a thing to repeat that unhappy experience, so they won't call in again.
Mm-hmm.
And thus, we get the people who are most likely to call in after a bad experience. And I could describe those people, but it's going to sound insulting.
Sure. What do you want me to do about it?
Be nice, you little grumpy bastard, you little prickly effer.
I'm generally not mean to people that call in. I mean, unless they're hostile, they're going to get back what you put into this show. So if you are a kind person who just wants to have a conversation, then that's what's going to happen. If you want to call in and call names and insult people, then you might get that back at you.
I think that. But what about just sort of being short? Like if somebody disagrees with you, they feel like they've been cut off.
People feel like that all the time.
Yes, they sure do.
Yeah, they do.
And I don't know how to properly address it.
The problem is people think that they're going to have like an unlimited speech, that they can just give from a podium here. They think they can have a speech without having any interruptions. And Skeeter's one of these people. He's called in within the last 2 weeks, and he just can't understand why he can't just go on and on and on without us, saying something to him. And
it's can kind of go on if you stay on one point.
Yeah, but they don't do that.
I mean, the stay on one point. But if you deviate from the point, like I just deviated from staying on one point, I deviated to what it's like to not be on that point. And that time that Bonnie interrupted Skeeter and Ian, I wish you'd wear a shirt. Like if you keep on bringing up extremist things, expect them to be addressed.
Yeah, you're right,
Like,
because we
taking
have to
pot shots isn't going to work.
Yeah, we have to address the things that are being said, and if 5 things get said in a row because the person's just allowed to just go straight blah 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 and whatever it was they want to say without any kind of interruption or questioning, well then, we're never going to get to address all of the things that person said in any decent amount of time. So we have to stop them down and say, whoa, before you go on to this, let's address the first thing you brought up, which is this.
Sometimes you can't even win. Like, what is his name? Ricky, he called maybe like 2 weeks ago, and he was going on, and for whatever reason, I don't know if he was drunk or something, but he was like super snippy this day, but Aria was the host, and she was letting him go on and on about some story. I said, wait, can you tell me what, like, asked for clarification on something? Yep. I wasn't being rude anyway. It was just some personal life story. It wasn't even like that I was like trying to make an argument about my position on. I just wanted to say, wait, what's that? Like, I don't even remember what the topic was now.
That's important.
You know what he did? He went, Bonnie, what do you personally have against me?
Yeah,
why are you cutting me off?
Personal. Yeah, you didn't say anything personal
and
against him.
And he was allowed to go off for a very long time. I was like, what? You just talked for like 2.5 minutes.
He had me the next day because Ricky's like Skeeter, one of these callers that loves to keep calling about things that happened in the past. And of course, now we're talking about things that happened in the past. But he asked me to review that call, and I took Bonnie's side on it, and I don't always take Bonnie's side on what she does on the air. But he was absolutely rude in how he responded. So some people just, they get the wrong idea about this, and you do have to ask questions to clarify. That is the hallmark of a good listener. If someone is talking to you and you do not understand what that person is saying, you're patronizing that individual if you're just saying, and nodding your head and going along, acting like you understand, when you're just actually waiting for the first opportunity to go on and say the thing you wanted to say in response to them without ever really listening to a single word. If you have a question for that person, you should get that question out. Not necessarily. It doesn't have to be immediately, but sooner rather than later.
And I think
you should get it out.
Something that we're plagued with on Free Talk Live. And I'll, 20 years ago when we started this radio program, I just had this unrealistic expectation that somehow we were going to have this round table of libertarian thinkers calling in. We toss out a subject, maybe squatters' rights, and any given subject, and we'd have these, libertarian thinkers call in, chime in their 2 cents. But in fact, we get a lot of people that are really miserable communicators, and it's rough, like,
well, we are the Libertarian Roundtable. That's the thing.
I know, buddy.
Yeah, so the Libertarian Roundtable.
I just imagined Robert P. Murphy and Jeffrey Tucker and Walter Block and these people. Because remember, this was 20 years ago. The radio was a really relevant thing at the time.
Yeah, no, that's funny. No, I didn't think that was going to happen. I did have a moment where I thought
we had Alex Jones call in and George W. Bush.
That's true. We did have Alex Jones call in, and we didn't set it up. We had Alex Jones as a guest that we set up once, and we were on his show, so we did kind of like a trade guest thing.
You went on Alex Jones' show?
Yeah, we talked about immigration with Alex Jones on.
He was telling us about the Quaker conspiracy, Bonnie.
This is probably more than a decade ago. But Alex Jones used to call our show as a caller. Alex in Texas.
More than once.
On more than one occasion. It was like I think he called on weekends typically.
He was right before something us, and so he would listen to his show, and then it'd lead right in.
Yeah, it was when we were on the pirate radio station in Austin, Texas, and that was airing us.
Like he'd hear something that deviated slightly from his point of view, which is just like everything else in America these days. If you deviate slightly, you are hell spawn. Everything you say is evil and wrong, and only the talking points are allowed.
By the way, we mentioned the event that Mark is going to be going to later this year. That is the Freedom Fest. You can, or not, I'm sorry, it's not called Freedom Fest. It's Liberty in Your Lifetime.
Free Cities, yeah.
Is that the name of it, Liberty in Your Lifetime, or the Free Cities Conference?
I think it's Liberty in Our Lifetime.
LibertyInOurLifetime.org, I think, is the website. Yep. That's where you can go if you would like to get registered for 10% off using code FTL. It's October 14th and 15th They're going to be having representatives from the Free Cities projects in U.S., Honduras, Germany, and Norway giving updates on progress and explaining why you should consider moving to or doing business in a free city, which is kind of this up-and-coming thing that if you get into, as Mark was saying the other night, it's pretty early, you're pretty pioneering. If you do it, it's probably not right for everybody, but definitely if it's something that's intrigued you, this is going to be the conference to go to meet the movers and the shakers, including Mark, who will be speaking at this conference as he did last year. It's libertyiноurlifetime.org. Use code FTL.
And there's been a caller that's called in a few times to kind of give me a little trouble about this, and I think I've been thinking about it. And at first, I want to say thank you. Right. Thank you for helping me to see things a little differently, because I don't think I've been doing the basics, which is, it's a real problem. Every time I talk about something, I need to be clear. And that in regards to building new places that are more free than old places, first, I believe in incrementalism, not necessarily all in one fell swoop. I think you have to kind of try things to see, not even the greatest libertarian is going to say there should be no rules. They'll say maybe there shouldn't be a coercive government to do a thing, but they're not going to say there should be no rules. So really what I'm meaning is freedom isn't sufficient. Freedom itself isn't enough for a place to be wildly successful overnight. Societies have to grow. People have to kind of feel out any given system, see whether the risks are worth putting millions of dollars on the line, and their sacred treasure. And it takes, in many cases, years. And the only thing I've said is that I'm exasperated with the idea of fighting statists. And by fighting statists, I mean giving them my energy, giving them my, my sacred time. I've got 30 years left on the planet. I'm 52. If I'm lucky, I live to 82. And I'm going to give that by arguing with statists. I'm sick of that. All I want to do is stop arguing and build things. And so, maybe these things will be wildly successful. Maybe they'll fail miserably. But I'm never going to lie about it. I'm only going to say what's true at any given time. So that's what my commitment is to my listeners, is that I will assess a situation, given a question, I will answer it as clearly as possible.
Fair enough.
Is this because of the caller that accused you of sounding like a swindler?
I know. And now that I can kind of
He can't help that.
I mean, if the guy thinks that because I talk fast, I sound like a swindler, what am I going to do about that? I'm a broadcaster. This is the way I talk. I don't know what to say about that. You sound like a swindler is certainly a way to undermine what somebody says. But I guess what I should say is, man, that's a hurtful statement. Nice. If that was a jab, excellent work, sir, because you found the thing that I value the most.
Yeah,
it really is. I am, I went from a person who would exaggerate the truth to a person who refuses to as best he can, because nobody's 100% honest, because nobody's 100% right.
Well, it's just in your defense, Mark. I don't think you said anything swindle sounding that night. It was just hilarious, and that's why I just kept laughing. And the other thing is, he didn't give any examples of why you sounded swindlery.
I don't think he was the greatest argument. He was the greatest arguer, but that doesn't mean that he didn't have a great call, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing is that we, to some extent, my job is to sit up behind that cage and call out, people who are walking by to get them to spend money to throw baseballs at me, right? And that guy.
That's a fun, crazy job, that guy at the county fair. It's always
what are you doing, big ears? Huh? Did your mom dress you tonight?
And the funny thing is about that guy, and Captain Kickass, if he were here tonight, he could talk about that, because he actually did work as a carny for some time in the South, and so he knew that guy. There was that guy was at that at that carnival. And that guy's using the same insults all day long, but he's just so good at it. Just so practiced, and just picks on anything about anybody. Doesn't care if you're fat, doesn't care if you're skinny, doesn't care, whatever.
He'll find something.
Yeah.
Nice shirt, Margaret. Whatever. You talking to me?
Yeah. I used to just really enjoy just standing there and just enjoying him just heckling people.
I can't let this go. Now that we're talking about the guy, because I know that you like him, I like him. I remember going to the fair and the Manatee County Fairgrounds in like 1985 and being shocked and appalled of the racial slurs that this guy was using. And it's not as though Manatee County in 1985 was a place without racial slurs at all, but the idea that you could sort of amplify it and
not get shut down.
Go for it. Yeah. But not get shut down, because and boy, did he have a lot of young black men throwing baseballs at him. I mean, like, he was doing his job.
Wow.
Just some things that were scalding. I'm like, man, that guy's gonna get his butt beat getting out of that cage. But he's like, what is that, a mango you got there? And then the guy could throw it at him. God.
I've never experienced this, but it sounds funny.
Really?
Yeah,
the world is a different place now.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to.
Like when you said calling someone fat, I was just thinking, I don't even think you could do that now. Just call someone fat to try to get them to throw a baseball at you. I think that they'd go directly to the manager and be like, I'm not fat. All food is good food.
Right.
And all bodies are good. And I demand $1 million.
Yeah, no, you're right, Bonnie. I mean, things are definitely different.
Imagine. I cannot even imagine what it's like. I did that job for the kids at PorcFest. Now, it didn't include throwing insults or anything like that. But, it was all the
unfun parts of getting frozen to death in the near to freezing water that comes out of the ground in
the guy who
northern New Hampshire.
The thing, every time a kid would throw a baseball, he'd hit the target and dunk me.
Oh yeah, brutal. Yeah, I got out.
Miserable.
I did that once.
Make the kid work for it.
I did that once and got out. I was like, screw this. I'm not going to do this.
Sharon Osbourne, who was running it at the time, she's like, I am so sorry.
Wow.
But the guy, wanted the kids to get their money's worth, and I'm kind of still even torn on the situation. I just don't think that. I felt like it was too much like a participation.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
It's like giving kids false hope that they're good at something.
Yeah.
We're talking about the various festivals.
I say let them get a little closer to throw, by age.
Yeah, sure.
They can have different lines by age to throw the
That
ball.
makes
like
sense.
Piñatas. You bring it right in front of the 2-year-olds so they can hit it, and then you make it harder for the 10-year-olds.
That makes sense.
A 10-year-old boy with a freaking broomstick will whip a leg off of a piñata donkey.
I want to come back to the controversy we were discussing before with the conservatives taking over versus liberals taking over certain spaces if there's no opposition, etc. The number here is 603-283-6160 if you want to join the show. Then, coming up, major hacker groups have announced a plan to cripple the Western financial system within 48 hours, and it may have already begun. It's Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. 0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow. The Greek government has declared 3 days of national mourning for the victims of a migrant boat sinking. At least 78 people died after a packed fishing boat capsized about 50 miles off the coast of Greece on Wednesday. Giles Gibson has more from Rome.
As Greek authorities announced a period of mourning, search and rescue teams were still hunting for survivors. But with every hour that passes, the chances of finding people alive in the open sea get smaller and smaller. Officials say the boat, which had set off from the coast of Libya, declined assistance from the Greek Coast Guard because it was trying to reach Italy. The Greek government has previously been accused of pushing migrant boats back from its waters, though it says its policies are tough but fair.
Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been found guilty of deliberately and repeatedly misleading Parliament. The long-awaited findings were published in a report by a group of MPs over the Partygate scandal, where social gatherings were held in Downing Street during the pandemic lockdowns, as John Beaver now reports from the UK.
The report comes at the end of an investigation into the former Prime Minister's knowledge of and involvement in a number of parties that took place in Downing Street. When they happened, they were in breach of the government's own strict pandemic guidelines put in place to limit the spread of COVID-19. The recommendation to suspend Mr Johnson from Parliament for an unprecedented 90 days can't be enforced as he stepped down as an MP last week, having been given an early private copy of the report. He's called it a political assassination, a witch hunt, and has criticised the report's authors, his own Conservative Party, and current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
The head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog has visited the Zaporizhzhia power plant. Rafael Grossi's visit comes after the recent dam burst in the area and the increased counteroffensive by Ukrainian forces. The IAEA chief says the situation at the power plant is serious, but the measures are being taken to stabilise the situation. Jody Jacobs reports.
Since the start of the war, the International Atomic Energy Agency has repeatedly expressed concern about Zaporizhzhia, amid fears of a potential nuclear catastrophe, as the plant has repeatedly been caught in the crossfire. And when the Kakhovka dam collapsed last week, it added a new concern, as the water is used to cool the plant's reactors. Grossi is hoping to get clarity on some of the agency's safety concerns during his visit.
The United Nations Secretary General says he's very worried about where the world stands in its fight against climate change. Addressing the media at UN headquarters on Thursday, Antonio Guterres said countries are far off track in meeting climate promises and commitments. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the extraordinary resignation of a top Canadian official from the Chinese-led Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Bob Pickard has quit his job as the bank's communications chief, saying he had concerns over his security because of Chinese influence over the bank's activities. He joined the institution in March last year, but says he came to conclude that the bank, which supports development projects worldwide, is a tool of the Chinese government.
AIIB is a tool of the Chinese Communist Party. The AIIB, despite what it says, is basically an arm of China's Belt and Road Initiative. Why should Canada be supporting China's ambition to be the #1 world power, conquering global markets versus the United States? If the people of our country and people of other Western countries were aware of this or could see it, what I have seen, they would be outraged. We shouldn't be part of this bank. It's not serving our interests whatsoever.
Mr. Pickard made those comments from Japan. The Canadian government says it is now freezing its ties with the AIIB while it reviews Mr. Pickard's claims. The bank says they are categorically false and that no one state or political party has any say over its strategic or operational activities. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
FSN is an independent source of news for TV, radio and digital networks worldwide. You can find more of our minute-by-minute updates on Twitter. Follow us there at Feature Story. And we have a wealth of audio and video stories from our global news bureaus on Facebook. You can find us there by following Feature Story News. Stay tuned for further updates right here. But for now, that's the latest Feature Story News. William Denslow reporting.
Congressman Hanford, you're married, 2 beautiful children, and yet you texted nude photographs to a 23-year-old staffer. Why did you do it?
I wanted her to see my penis. I was hoping the penis photo would arouse her sexually, that she might think, that's a nice penis. I will respond with an offer to have sex with the penis, or maybe send a photo of my breasts. I would like that. And that's what I was hoping would happen.
Here's what intrigues so many people. Why would a promising, successful politician take such a big risk?
I knew I could let down my family, destroy my marriage, and damage the country that I love, but on the other hand, if there's even the small chance of getting off at any time, you gotta take it.
The big question. Do you plan to resign?
No, I'm very good at my job. Plus, it's a lot harder to get women to have sex with you when you're not a congressman.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Yes, it is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. It's Ian, Bonnie, and Mark joining you tonight. And I got to give big props out to Jay in our chat room over at chat.freetalklive.com. The man is a human archive. When you say something, he just finds something related to it, even whether it's on the internet today or was on the internet a decade ago. He pulled up at least 3 or 4 pictures from the drag show that happened at the Porcupine Freedom Festival 11 years ago. Just within moments from us talking. So like an hour ago, Mark, when we were talking about this, just within seconds, he just pulls up high resolution images. I don't think these are easily accessible online. Maybe they are somewhere, and he just has an index of it. But I think he's just got like a personal collection of this stuff and has it all indexed and organized. So yeah, so if you want to see the evidence of what it looked like when there was an actual drag show at the Porcupine Freedom Festival in the year 2012.
I see more evidence of Ian doxing.
You can go to chat.freetalklive.com there and jump into the On Air Now chat room and scroll back for a little bit within the last hour. You'll find them. I think I'm going to hold on to them and then next week re-release them as though they're going on this year at the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
Oh God, that is so funny.
Maj Tour, where you at? I'll tag him or something like that. And
have you been to RV? Like give him some number that doesn't actually exist.
Send him on a wild goose chase. Anyway,
a wild drag queen chase.
So yeah, that is something we were talking about in the last hour, and I did want to come back.
Well, I just wanted to chime in real quick on Jay Freeville. The guy has an amazing mind. Just really, really special individual. For better or for worse, amazing mind.
Okay. He says, I should have an archive because this stuff will eventually disappear. Most of it has. So I guess he just knows where it all is. So we were talking about this in the last hour, and I wanted to come back around to it because I don't feel like we really got into it. Somebody called in and kind of we went in a different direction. But we were talking about the freedom festivals that are happening out there, the largest ones of which the Porcupine Freedom Festival, I think, has taken the mantle of being the biggest Liberty Festival, and I'm including conventions like Freedom Fest, which is also very large. Probably.
What else would you confuse? I mean, like I think it's the largest Liberty event in the world.
Yeah,
it has the distinct advantage of being relatively low priced. I don't know what they're charging for the Porcupine Freedom Festival these days.
I think it's $75 pre-sale, and then maybe $100. If you just show up.
Yeah, there's just not many conventions. I mean, how's a convention going to run on that kind of money? It just basically can't.
Right.
So.
Yeah, Jay says special as in short bus, Mark. So anyway, we were talking about the kind of the differences between the events, and of course ForkFest, which is a very small event by comparison over the last several years, is an alternative to the Porcupine Freedom Festival. It's a friendly competitor. It doesn't happen at the same time. It happens usually before or after the Porcupine Freedom Festival. It started as a result of some people being disappointed by some of the policies of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which had become a little bit large and a little, in some ways, overbearing on some of the vendors, for instance. And so they decided, well, some of us said, let's just throw our own thing. We'll do it at the same campground. We'll do it right next to the Porcupine Freedom Festival and have no ticket price. So it's an even more affordable event. Of course, it's also not as well attended. It's a newer event. And, I don't think it's ever even come close to having a competing level of attendance. But the people that have attended the event have seemed to enjoy it. It hasn't particularly been well attended by vendors and such, but apparently that has changed as of this year. According to early reports in the ForkFest chat room at chat.freetalklive.com from last night, apparently Bumps, whom you know very well, Mark, she was working for you out there in Honduras for a time, very talented chef. I think she's got one of the seasonal rentals at Rogers, if I recall correctly. Yep. And so she's up there at her rental doing cooking out of her rental and is offering, hot food for people to eat already. And according to a regular attendee, Gluten Freeman, who's there, he is reporting that many vendors are already getting set up and or are set up. So I don't know how many of those vendors are food vendors. This is information we're going to get probably from Aria when she finally is able to report in. And by the way, the Free Talk Live booth is apparently set up, so it looks good. She's posted a photo of that online, so I presume they're going to begin recording today or tomorrow. And we should have some ForkFest content for you, hopefully.
Bumps cooking was one of the highlights of my mom's trip to Honduras a few weeks ago.
Nice.
Yeah, she commented on it. Bumps is, she can take not much at all and turn it into something healthy and good.
Yeah, and when there's a campground that is devoid of any kind of food at all, it's wonderful to have somebody who knows what they're doing in a kitchen cooking. So that's apparently what was the situation there last night. And so if you want to check out ForkFest, it's going through the weekend. The Porcupine Freedom Festival starts on Monday at Rogers Campground. Get on up to New Hampshire. It's in the north part of New Hampshire. It's called Lancaster. Very, very beautiful place to be. If all you can do is come up for a day, it may be worth it. It's just really cool to meet so many different libertarians in one place. I guess I should say it's probably worth it. What would you say, Bonnie? Was it worth going up for the one day that you went up last year?
Yeah, it was really, really fun. Like I said, I've lived in places that have a smaller population than PorcFest has. So it's like going to a small town and everyone you meet is, oh yeah, we already agree that aggression, is bad.
Right. Yeah. You don't have to. You're starting from a basis of being able to have conversations that you would not normally have in a, say, normal small town, and it is a really exciting thing to be able to experience that many liberty-minded people in the same place. And people are doing various different things. We got Jay Noon's going to be up there with Man Camp this year. He's talked a lot about that, which is a really cool event. There's always all kinds of different food vendors at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And it sounds like a lot of them are getting set up early, which means they're there for ForkFest as well, which for the last few years wasn't the case at all at ForkFest. It was pretty sparse as far as people being willing to sell some food. There were some on occasion, but sometimes you had to go into into town to actually get some food for yourself because there just wasn't that much when we did ForkFest after the Porcupine Freedom Festival. But last year, people decided, all right, let's go and move it beforehand again. So it was the first 3 years ForkFest was before the Porcupine Freedom Festival, and then the most recent 3 years it was after. And that kind of had its own ups and downs. Like beforehand, when we first did it beforehand, there was this run up to PorcFest, which was kind of exciting. There was a lot of people, coming into the park because people will show up early for the Porcupine Freedom Festival, whether they know there's an event called ForkFest happening or not. So you kind of benefited from that. Whereas afterwards, there was like an immediate drop-off of attendees who were leaving the Porcupine Freedom Festival, and it just became this kind of really intimate group of people that were just staying on for the full week afterwards. And then it culminated in a very large fireworks show that the park puts on for the 4th of July Independence Day weekend, which was a really cool event, brought in a lot of average people to the park. So there was kind of like a mixing of the liberty-minded people and just average people that were there for Independence Day. I kind of liked that one, but I also really liked the energy of leading into the Porcupine Freedom Festival. So I think this year is going to be probably the best Fork Fest yet, is the way it's sounding. So if you get the chance to come on up this weekend or start your Porcupine Freedom Festival early, start it with Fork Fest. Go to forkfest.party. You can get connected with the Fork Fest chat rooms and things like that there. But Mark, what we were talking about earlier that I wanted to come back around to, you would discuss this idea that you have that unless conservatives...
I was discussing something that has been said on the internet and seemed insightful.
You seem to agree with it.
I do agree with it because it seems insightful.
It's an idea you've taken on. And you were saying that unless conservatives are hostile towards liberals, the liberals will take over an online space. Is that right?
Or frankly, any space. But yeah.
Or a real life space. And you were.
I probably can't give you any real life examples. Bonnie had used, as I recall, the church as an example of where conservatives have done the opposite.
Oh, I don't know about I don't recall her using the church.
Okay.
As
I did right at the end. I said, well, like when I was a kid, you didn't just like assume everyone you went to church with was a Republican. And now, like even in like 2016, it ramped up so much that my parents had God TV on all the time in our house. And in 2016, the people on God TV were saying stuff like, God wants you to vote for Donald Trump to save this earth.
They've been saying that for decades, though.
It wasn't like that when I was a kid. And there's been God TV on in my house since I was born.
Ian, I think that there's an entirely different it's an entirely different statement to say God wants you to vote for Donald Trump than God wants you to vote for George W. Bush. George W. Bush had all the outward appearances of a pretty pious man who had changed his life from his wild youth, whereas Donald Trump has none of those outward appearances.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Donald Trump is a whoremonger. He cusses, and the only thing he doesn't do is drink.
Yeah, my point was the conservative Christians have been endorsing Republicans for president forever and claiming God wants you to vote for Ronald Reagan or, Bob Dole or whatever.
Would it be commonplace for somebody to say vote for George Bush, or would it be more commonplace for someone to say, like, God's going to help us against the terrorists? Like something more abstract, not straight up, God came to me in a vision last night and told me to tell you to vote for Donald Trump like Jim Baker does.
The only reason that God would come in a vision to tell you to vote for Donald Trump is because no Christian in their right mind would.
Yeah,
right?
my grandma
there's nothing
used to
Christian about Donald Trump. And ladies and gentlemen, I certainly like him better than Joe Biden. It's just I'm not a fool. I'm not an idiot that deludes myself about things. Could God want a guy who is clearly not holy and a Christian to do a given thing? Sure, God uses people as a tool all the time. One would hope that that's what you're looking for. But if you're trying to endorse Christians for the highest office in the land, Donald Trump is not your man.
So this idea that the conservatives must be hostile, like actively hostile, meaning Maj Tour, for instance, threatening to assault a drag queen story hour participant or anyone participating in a drag queen story hour in his quote-unquote community, which he defined as the Porcupine Freedom Festival in a subsequent tweet.
His community is wherever he is.
That's what I thought. And that's what I said he meant when he first said it. And then he clarified that, yes, indeed, that was what he meant.
He used the word PorcFest, too. He said, yes, for example, if I'm at PorcFest is my community.
Yep. And I think he said, make of that what you will, or something to that effect. And
I make of it as a threat that I find a little terrifying.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely a threat. And
I wonder how many people aren't coming to PorcFest this year because they believe that there's going to be a shootout between the libertarians and the conservatives.
That's a good point, but I also wonder how many are
Mark it down as at least one.
A lot of them are. I haven't heard anyone say that, but I have heard people say that they're not coming because of me saying that there's going to be drag queen story hour.
Yeah, and that's the thing I wanted to point out is that when it comes to the conservatives and why they want to stop Drag Queen Story Hour, or in the case of some conversations that I had in regards to this issue online with people, like there was certain individuals who normally, I follow them on Twitter. They talk about New Hampshire, they're free staters, they're here already, that kind of thing. And, it's interested to see what people are doing and saying. Some of them were saying, oh, I'm not going to attend because of this Drag Queen Story Hour. And, of course, the first thing you have to say is, well, but your kids don't have to go. I mean, there's literally 1,000 other things going on this campground in a given moment. Maybe I'm exaggerating somewhat, but there's probably at least 100 of them going
I don't
on.
really care what somebody says when they say they're not going to PorcFest because of X and they have never been.
Oh, no, these are people who have been.
Okay.
So,
well, if they have been, then I think that there's a fair discussion to have about the ongoing more than decade old disagreement between this sort of libertarians and conservatarians, or libertines and conservatarians, right, at PorcFest. And that's an interesting. Well, I mean,
sorry,
you can't act like it doesn't
I'm just
occur.
laughing at the word conservatarian because it's such a nonsense word. They're conservatives, is what they are.
Okay,
there's no such thing as a conservatarian.
I think that there's conservatives that lean libertarian.
Anyway, go ahead with this.
Wait. I actually want to tell you what I was laughing at, but I wanted to make sure I was right.
I thought that was what you were.
No, I was laughing that he called. I don't know if he's referring to me as a libertine. Are you, Mark?
I'm just saying that there's this ongoing dispute. There was a club essentially trying to get rid of people called normal by comparison, or
not Bat S Crazy, NBC.
NBC. It was NBC, normal by comparison.
Yeah.
And
they all wore the same T-shirt to the group photo at PorcFest, and they all camped together.
I just want
to explain. I think what they were trying to do, I'm sorry, let me just jump in. I think what they were trying to do is provide a conservative space, right, at PorcFest.
Yep.
And that they also found that some behavior distasteful. And I think that this has been going on for a long time, and PorcFest, does it suffer from it? I think it suffers from it, but I'll bet you people complain about each other at other festivals too.
Here's the thing. The definition of libertine is a person who behaves without moral principles or a sense of responsibility, especially in sexual matters. But the thing about it is, everybody who calls themselves a libertarian should be behaving in moral principles. And to think that just because somebody else's morality allows them to run a drag queen story hour, it doesn't make them a libertine. I'm not necessarily saying you're calling that libertine, Mark, but
I'll go so far as to call Aria DiMezzo a libertine.
Aria has a moral compass she follows.
She's a strong moral compass.
I agree with that. But
she's a hedonist, but that's part of her morality.
Okay, hedonist and libertine. Why don't you look up synonyms for hedonist and see what we come up with? Because
you would say that
the online dictionary that you picked doesn't have a definition that sort of works. I mean, Aria, to me, what a libertine is a person who seeks sensual pleasure and hopes to not deal with the consequences thereof.
Well, I would use the word hedonist. I'm not trying to just be like, well, the definition says this technically, but I would say libertine is an insult to anyone calling themselves a libertarian, including Aria, because it means that they have no moral compass and just don't care about morality.
Well, there certainly are words that mean the same thing as another word, but are intended to be
different definitions.
No, intended to be insulting.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like there's words that mean exactly this, just, you can use them interchangeably, but one is insulting and the other one isn't insulting. I personally, if I heard the two words, would call hedonist the one that leans towards insulting, and libertine the one that is less so.
Well, I fall really right in between you and Aria's ideas of definitions. Like Aria is like, definitions are meaningless at all. You shouldn't even bother with them. And wait, you're kind of saying the same thing, Mark. You're saying that definitions don't. I fall in between the two extremes of that.
I would say this is that if you.
I just think you're using words.
If you attempt to solve a dispute, I will defend you in this very quickly, Bonnie. If it wasn't for semantic arguments, Free Talk Live wouldn't exist. Okay, I'm on board with semantic arguments. However, just because tickety in the course of a conversation, the dictionary.com comes up and the definition says that's not like we've just allowed some 25-year-old graduate student to determine what the definition of a given word is.
Well, I automatically knew it was insulting, and I knew that the definition would pull that up. I just wanted to make sure before I said anything out loud. I mean, the thing is, like, I think you're just using words and saying, well, it means what I think it means. And it's basically the same argument Arya makes, and I don't like that.
That's what a native speaker of a language does, right? Like, they don't look up every word and then piece them together for every sentence. But I did look up 16 synonyms and antonyms for hedonist. Would you like to hear some of them?
No, it's in there for sure. Okay. I checked that.
Well, yeah, because they give you very loose like synonyms. Like maybe you're looking for this. It doesn't mean these two things mean the same exact thing.
I would say gourmand is a loose synonym for hedonist.
And what does it mean?
I'd say libertine is a pretty tight synonym for hedonist.
I just know that if the thing about it is when somebody insults me with it on Twitter, when they say libertarianism isn't libertinism, they're
but it
implying
kind of is.
That
Libertarianism should defend the libertines.
I agree.
I will turn from where you're at. You aren't a libertine.
No, I'm not.
I've stayed at your house for weeks, in total, weeks on end. I know how you live. You're not a libertine. You are a conservative young lady who lives a conservative life. End of story. Like you're not running around running amok.
I think he means as in not. I don't know. I don't think he means conservative like a right winger.
Libertine is, in my opinion, involves sexual exploits and a great deal of drug doing. And you're not that kind of gal. So the fact that you're defending it is simply you're a libertarian defending people's right to act like libertines or hedonists, if that's what terminology you want to use. I consider hedonist to be a more insulting term. Though that's fine. I think that libertarians, look, as long as Arya doesn't hurt anyone, then she should be able to, and doesn't force any kids to listen to her stories, she should be able to go someplace and read Tuttle Twins to anybody who wants their kids to hear it and any kids that want to come here.
And she wouldn't force anyone.
And that's all I would say.
She wouldn't force anyone. Why? Because she has a moral compass.
All right, well, I want to come back to it here. We got a caller on the line here. Caller, you're on Free Talk Live. What's your name?
David Fight.
David, you're on the air.
Hey, I'm going to back up Mark here a little bit. I personally, I've used the word libertine to define myself plenty of times, and I agree with the definition that Bonnie pulled up, but it's even specifically said there at the end, like specifically towards sexuality.
Yes.
So I've just always, I guess, made that more of an important part of the definition. And so, like Mark said, more towards the drugs and the sex side of things. And
alcohol's a drug, kids.
Yeah.
So's caffeine.
Bonnie's a caffeine user every day.
She is a caffeine user. But I am willing to withhold the hedonist term from Bonnie over just caffeine. Caffeine is, if you're going to be addicted to a drug, I will allow caffeine more than I will allow others.
The king has spoken.
Mm-hmm.
David, what else?
I was just curious. You guys were talking about like PorcFest and stuff, and I'm going to be at PorcFest for the first time next week.
Hey, great!
And
bring your bulletproof vest.
Yeah, I definitely I speak to. I have heard quite a few people that have said that they're not coming.
All right, hold that thought. I want to talk about it. Stand by, David. We're going to bring you back here in a moment. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. If you are a liberty-minded person and you're not going to the Porcupine Freedom Festival, why not? I mean, hey, if you can't afford it, that's a good reason. But if you can afford to be there, it's a great thing to attend. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Never, ever send a follow-up email asking, "Did you get my email?" Email 101. If it didn't bounce back undeliverable, it got where you sent it. And avoid transmedia pestering, like calling to ask, did you get my email? Or emailing to say, I left you a voicemail. If your emails and voicemails aren't being acknowledged, your problem isn't technology, it's technique. Is your message concise and understandable? Have you boiled it down to seem as relevant as possible to the recipient? In other words, is it the opposite of spam or junk mail? All of this really matters if you're a job seeker. But even if you're not, with money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow. The Greek government has declared 3 days of national mourning for the victims of a migrant boat sinking. At least 78 people died after a packed fishing boat capsized about 50 miles off the coast of Greece on Wednesday. Giles Gibson has more from Rome.
As Greek authorities announced a period of mourning, search and rescue teams were still hunting for survivors. But with every hour that passes, the chances of finding people alive in the open sea get smaller and smaller. Officials say the boat, which had set off from the coast of Libya, declined assistance from the Greek Coast Guard because it was trying to reach Italy. The Greek government has previously been accused of pushing migrant boats back from its waters, though it says its policies are tough but fair.
Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been found guilty of deliberately and repeatedly misleading Parliament. The long-awaited findings were published in a report by a group of MPs over the Partygate scandal, where social gatherings were held in Downing Street during the pandemic lockdowns, as John Beaver now reports from the UK.
The report comes at the end of an investigation into the former Prime Minister's knowledge of and involvement in a number of parties that took place in Downing Street. When they happened, they were in breach of the government's own strict pandemic guidelines put in place to limit the spread of COVID-19. The recommendation to suspend Mr Johnson from Parliament for an unprecedented 90 days can't be enforced as he stepped down as an MP last week, having been given an early private copy of the report. He's called it a political assassination, a witch hunt, and has criticised the report's authors, his own Conservative Party, and current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
The head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog has visited the Zaporizhzhia power plant. Rafael Grossi's visit comes after the recent dam burst in the area and the increased counteroffensive by Ukrainian forces. The IAEA chief says the situation at the power plant is serious, but the measures are being taken to stabilise the situation. Jody Jacobs reports.
Since the start of the war, the International Atomic Energy Agency has repeatedly expressed concern about Zaporizhzhia, amid fears of a potential nuclear catastrophe, as the plant has repeatedly been caught in the crossfire. And when the Kakhovka dam collapsed last week, it added a new concern, as the water is used to cool the plant's reactors. Grossi is hoping to get clarity on some of the agency's safety concerns during his visit.
The United Nations Secretary General says he's very worried about where the world stands in its fight against climate change. Addressing the media at UN headquarters on Thursday, Antonio Guterres said countries are far off track in meeting climate promises and commitments. From bureaus worldwide, this is...
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We're talking about freedom festivals and the internal controversies that sometimes blow up to be quite external to the festival, quite controversial outside of the festival, even discouraging people from attending said festival, which is what we're talking about right now with the upcoming Porcupine Freedom Festival. Some people are not going to attend because there could be a drag show at the festival. Others are not going to attend because somebody might get hurt at the festival because somebody threatened somebody over the drag show or whatever.
I'm really interested to know what the caller says as why he's heard people aren't going.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that here, but I do want to say thanks to Dash and the killer app that they launched, by the way, last year called Dash Direct. This app allows you to spend Dash, which is a cryptocurrency, by the way, for those that don't know. Dash is digital cash. They are a sponsor here on Free Talk Live. And it is a cryptocurrency designed to actually be used for spending. So here's a perfect excuse to spend your crypto. You get a discount when you spend Dash at over 155,000 locations across the United States. We're talking about major retail brands, major retailers that you know that are in your area. You can spend Dash.
That is a killer app.
Yeah, you can get Dash Direct on your Apple or Android App Store right now, and it'll give you the list of, give it access to your location. It'll show you what's in the area that you can go and spend Dash at. And different stores have different discount levels, so it may range from as little as less than 1% in some cases to as high as over 8 or 9%. So it just all depends on the company and what kind of deal they want to offer. The stores are there for you whenever they're open. You can use Dash to make those purchases. And Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies out there. It's widely available on exchanges and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get. It's easy to use Dash. You can start by learning more at Dash.org. And big thanks to the Dash Decentralized Autonomous Organization for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. You can visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. That's Dash.org. I'm going to bring David back on the line. He's in upstate.
Well, I just want to talk about these synonyms for hedonist here that I looked up.
Okay.
Man, this is some exciting stuff. So Bonnie didn't like that I used the term libertine and thought that hedonist sound better. And I think that that's a coin toss as to whether or not that's so. I think I'll give anybody whatever they want as far as that goes. But there's some really tough ones here as synonyms for hedonist. Debauchee.
Debauchery?
Like a debauchery, but a person who
participates.
Oh, like
debauchee. Yeah. Lecher.
Yep.
Profligate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a couple here that I'm not even familiar with. I didn't know what a sybarite is, or a voluptuary. I've never heard that term either.
Wow.
I know what voluptuous is. I kind of like pleasure monger, but I see why that's considered a lesser synonym as opposed to a closer one here at thesaurus.com.
It's a handy website. David, you're back with us here.
The last one I want that didn't get mentioned on the list is sodomite.
Okay.
Oh, God.
David is back with us here in New York. He's in upstate New York. And, David, you were going to comment on the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which you said you are going to attend for the very first time this coming week, but you've actually heard of people, or maybe you know them personally, who aren't going to go, and that's where we left off.
Yeah, I've definitely heard. I've heard a couple of people, and mostly from people that have actually attended before. I know Mark kind of put that stipulation on earlier, and I agree with that. I think if you don't know what the culture is like at an event, you really shouldn't be commenting on it. But mostly from people that have been there before. I've heard a few people say that they're not coming because of Maj. I've heard no one say that they're not coming because of Bonnie.
Well, wait, hold on. Before you go on, when you say because of Maj, are you referring to the fact that Maj Toure, who is someone who purports himself to be a libertarian but obviously doesn't understand the principles, he's going to be a paid speaker there who has threatened to quote-unquote assault anyone attending a drag queen story hour. Is it specifically because of his threat, or is it because they just don't like Maj and they don't want to attend an event that would have him speak?
I don't. For the most part, they're people that already didn't like him, but the threat was the final straw of definitely. I feel like people that already didn't like him felt like now they actually had a really strong, purely libertarian reason for why he didn't belong there.
Sure, I think him supporting reparations is a good enough purely libertarian reason to not like him and want him to speak there.
Yeah, but just because you don't like somebody who's speaking
reparations are potentially libertarian. I don't see why they wouldn't be.
Well, he thinks that the federal government, as it stands right now, should be giving reparations. Sorry, David.
Yeah, it's not very libertarian.
Didn't the federal government exist in 1789 when slavery existed?
Did the taxpayer, for example, exist?
Well, that's a different story.
Well,
you can leave the United States anytime you want and stop paying taxes there.
It's not libertarian to argue that the government owns me, Mark, and you've tried a million times and you failed. I don't know why you continue to think the things you think, but it doesn't matter.
You don't have to pay the taxes, right?
Yeah, tell that to my jury.
You absolutely have to, yeah.
Anyway.
Under threat of violence.
Well, then at that point, if you take that position that we shall vote for and against, or we shall support or not support, as far as I'm concerned, this federal government is an organization.
I don't want to go too far off into the weeds here. We got David on the line. He's calling about PorcFest. Let's keep it focused on this. You can come back to it later, Mark, if you really think it's important.
Fair enough.
But David, you were saying that these people are upset because Maj had made a threat. Does that mean that they are upset because the event didn't ban Maj and that's why they don't want to attend, or are they actually afraid that Maj might shoot them? Are they liberal leaning people, or I mean, can you flesh this out a little bit more?
I don't know of anyone that's actually afraid of Maj in reality. It was more just I'm not going to give my money to an event that's then going to give some of that back to someone like Maj Touré.
Okay.
Well, really interesting to me because I hadn't heard anyone say that so far. Most people have been just like, shut up, groomer, in response to this whole thing to me.
Well, this is the ongoing argument: is the libertarians at these festivals, is the libertarians versus the conservatives, and the ways that they have difficulty getting along. And I think that when PorcFest decided to hang hard right and ban Ian, there were a lot of people who decided not to go ever again.
Yep,
and
that's true.
Some of which have never been back. And I think that it's a
people hold grudges.
Yeah, well, it's true. I mean, I'm holding grudge.
Yeah, I don't think he should. But
I haven't heard. Well, I haven't heard an apology. I'm happy to forgive, but I like to hear apologies before.
Oh no, David. I mean, Dennis Pratt thinks that we should worship at his feet and think anything that he does is acceptable because he let Ian back in. He was one of the ones that helped Ian be welcomed back in. So therefore, any action he takes now that we're criticizing, we shouldn't even be criticizing him because we should be grateful.
David, you were trying to get at something there before Mark jumped in.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've only heard like 2 or 3 people talk about Maj. I've heard at least 4 or 5 say they're not coming because of RFK's gun-free zone.
Yeah. And for listeners that don't know, I think we should, flesh that out a bit. So RFK Jr., the Democrat presidential candidate, was invited to speak, along with some other Republican presidential candidates, which I think is a huge error for the festival. But people really zeroed in on the fact that, not the fact that these people are speaking from the main stage, but the fact that they, in the case of RFK, have a deal with the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which will prohibit people from carrying guns into the speaking area, which is the pavilion, sort of the largest stage at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And that really did cause a lot of controversy surrounding the event.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally, as a New Yorker, this is going to be the most libertarians I've seen in the same space ever, most likely. And so I'm still excited to get out of I've been bouncing back and forth between hard blue, big cities, and hard red, small towns for the last 5 years. And I'm still excited to go. I think a lot of this is kind of petty. If there's something that you don't like, just don't go to it. There's, you said earlier, there's 100 other things going on. So, if you don't want to put up your guns for an hour and go hear RFK speak, you don't have to.
Yep, I'm with you on that,
That's
David.
my opinion on the subject. I think that, trying if they want to bring people in, politicians that want people's votes, fine and dandy. I do feel it adds some legit. I hear it. I know your opinion. If it lends some level of
but it doesn't need it. The event doesn't need legitimacy. The event is already the top-selling, top-attended libertarian festival on the planet. You do not need a politician to then come in and bring anything to that.
It takes away legitimacy
to
me because if you're trying to say my principles are these, but I'm going to bend to these principles over here, they're completely counter. It's taking away your honesty and integrity and legitimacy.
Yeah, I think it's a huge error, but I'm not running the thing.
And that doesn't mean I'm going to protest and not go to it. It just means that I'm not going to attend.
We're going to speak out about it, though.
Things. Yeah, definitely.
I think it's completely fair to give your opinion, and I totally agree with people who say, you know what, I'm not taking my gun off, and you don't want to go down there, don't go down there.
Right.
That's my opinion on the subject.
David, when are you getting there?
The other one where Maj does in my opinion, completely unacceptable thing.
Yeah.
Which is to say
threats. Yeah.
a threat of physical harm, where the PorcFest then says, you know what, it's fine because he's really pretty special. And okay, maybe he's really great. I admittedly knew nothing about the guy beforehand. I hope that that's okay. But the guy, I feel that we should draw a line.
I agree. I'm not going to draw the line and protest the event, though. And I'm of this belief that I'm with Bonnie on this. It's like the event is bigger than the organizer of it, or the organizers, whoever it was that made these errors. Mistakes are going to be made, and I think that the event will be fine, however it goes, with regards to whoever's organizing the thing, unless they really turn it into a total police state like they were trying to less than a decade ago. But I think that for the most part, the event is pretty open. There's a lot of things that are going on. You certainly don't have to go to these events. And David, when are you going to be arriving at the Porcupine Freedom Festival?
I think I'll be there Sunday afternoon.
Oh, okay, cool. So you'll be there for the last night of ForkFest then?
Yeah, I guess so.
All right.
We'll see how the driving up goes. I'm carpooling with Dan Taxation and Seth Berman.
Oh, cool.
We'll see.
He's going to be speaking there, right?
Yes, he is.
I think Bonnie's a fan of his.
I just follow him on Twitter, and I think he's kind of cool.
Yeah. Isn't he from Massachusetts?
I don't know much about him.
That way he can have extra theft. He can be even more indignant.
What's that, David?
Currently, he lives in Mexico.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. I thought he was... That's pretty cool. Yeah. All right. Hey, David, thanks for the call tonight, man. I appreciate it. We'll look forward to seeing you at the festival. Be sure you stop by the Free Talk Live table, say hi. We got bumper stickers, that kind of thing.
Will do. Thanks
we're at RV Site 46, by the way. Thanks for the call tonight. And I hope you have a really good time there at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, because that's the thing. You will have, if you like liberty and you don't mind being around people, you will have a great time at this event, regardless of whatever is going on down the hill at the main stage, regardless of whatever controversies might be bubbling up amongst the personalities, because inevitably with 2,000 people in a park, somebody's going to disagree with another person. Somebody there is going to have it up to here with another individual that they don't like, and whether it will come to fisticuffs or not is pretty rare at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. There have been a couple of...
I can't think of too many instances like that, and they do have security.
Yeah, they got security, but the security is actually the park attendees. The people who are around are the ones that are going to stop something from happening. It was the middle of the night when our co-host Nobody, at the time he was Rich Paul, got into a fight with somebody who he'd been having tensions with for some time, and the people that were immediately in the vicinity stepped right in and broke it up. There was no need for quote unquote PorcFest security to be called. It just got taken care of. So, and turns out a bunch of armed people are able to stop people from fighting one another, surprisingly enough. And they broke up the parties and sent them on their own way, and that was the end of that for the rest of the week. So the thing I wanted to say here earlier, and I don't think you've even gotten quite to my point, because we always get waylaid into various related discussions, is when you actually talk to these conservatives who are upset at the fact that somebody would have a drag queen story hour, whether it actually happens or not. At the time, it probably wasn't even going to happen. Now we're going to have trans story hour at the Free Talk Live site.
And that was the poison pill for that the conservatives don't really understand. You do not go to a libertarian event and tell people, well, the conservatives are here and y'all are going to behave. What? Yeah. Really? Like, whoever did this was breathtakingly ignorant of how PorcFest works.
Well, some of them just simply said they weren't going to attend at all, even if there was a chance that Drag Queen Story Hour could happen, even though I pointed out to them, hey, look, there's another 6 events going on all at the same time. Your children do not have to be at the Drag Queen Story Hour. In fact, it's intended for people who want to attend. So you can just be somewhere else. Oh, well, my kids run around the park and I don't have to know what they're doing at any given time. So they
might
could just
see one.
They might see one. Yes, it wasn't.
You're responsible for your kids' behavior, and you always have been.
No doubt.
Okay.
But the point, and when we drilled down with them even if they were to stay with their kids at all times and monitor them at all times, they were simply worried that they would see a drag queen walking through the park. Not even so much giving drag queen story hour, but just the fact that a drag queen would be visible at the Porcupine Freedom Festival was enough to scare these people away. And I'm glad. I'm not criticizing their decision. Please do not come to the Porcupine Freedom Festival if you cannot allow other people their freedoms. You don't belong. Conservatives, if you are not at least open-minded enough to allow other people to express their freedoms how they want to, you cannot handle the Porcupine Freedom Festival, and you should go to some conservative, stuffy, boring church event. Okay?
So strange. I mean, when I was a kid, we had people like Dame Edna, and I can't remember what the other guy's name was that would dress up as women and do comedy skits. And I mean, it's very common.
All hair metal people basically dressed as women.
Sure. I mean, Mrs. Doubtfire.
My mom used to literally say, when I was a teenager, I liked the guys that were androgynous. And she didn't turn out gay.
Well, that's the thing. I think that's what this comes down to, is these people are literally, they're afraid of the gay. They are afraid of the gay, and Aria pointed this out recently with the fear-mongering coming out of places like Florida and the conservatives down there cheering on gay people leaving and all that. There are literally some people who are conservatives who believe that if their children simply see a person who's cross-dressing, that it will infect them and turn their children gay, and they cannot possibly.
Don't look, Billy.
Right,
don't look.
Right. I mean, what else could it be?
Well,
it's either that or they're just so afraid of being able to have a conversation, right? Because if Billy looks and sees a drag queen over on the other side of the campground or walking by them as they're going to the vendor to get some lunch, and Billy says to mom and dad, "Hey, how come that man's wearing a wig? Why is that man wearing makeup?" or whatever it is that a kid would say.
Why is that woman
right?
so tall?
Yeah, whatever a kid would say, because kids say the darndest things sometimes. Is it that these conservatives just simply cannot handle having a conversation about this? Dismissing it with whatever insulting conservative invective that they would say to their kids? That's not enough for them? They can't handle this discussion with their kids?
Even my extremely conservative parents that I grew up with, it was just different before 2 years ago. I'm not even joking. Like, I think that conservatives have gone way off the handle. Like, some pendulum has swung so hard, or swinged, really? Swung, there we go, way hard in the other direction, because my extremely conservative parents and extremely Christian parents, when I was a kid, they didn't just think that like my mom would watch, I don't remember what it's called. It's not What Not to Wear, but another TLC show with me where a gay guy named Jorge would dress up women and be like, "See, you look better in an A-line skirt." And she would be like, "He is so cute and gay," and stuff. She wouldn't be like, don't look like to my little brother like he's going to turn gay, or me. And I remember like awkward things that would cause me to ask awkward questions coming up, but in a tasteful way. Not like, it's not like my parents just talked about sex in front of me, but I remember this time that my mom was reading to my dad a news article, and it said that someone got raped, and I was like very, very young. I don't know how old. And I said, "What's that mean?" And my mom was just like, "You'll learn what that means later when you're older." Something like that. Okay. And I for the rest of my life was like, I'm going to figure out what that means.
I'm going to figure out what that means. Well, I have asked on the air, and I'm, still find it an interesting question, is why would any drag queen want to do a story hour? And why would a parent want to send their kid to a drag queen story hour? Now, in the case of Aria, I know the answer. The answer is because some authoritarian conservative said, you do this, you do X, and I'm gonna punch you in the face, right? And that's to my mind, a fair thing to do. If you don't stand up for your freedoms, you don't have them. And so I understand that particular reason that Aria did it, but I still don't understand why many drag queens and why apparently parents send their kids to drag queen story hour. And by the way, one more thing, I don't even know if it's true. Like, that's the thing is that I've heard things, and but I don't believe this stuff. I remember the Hillary Clinton, we got her, she let those 4 guys die in Egypt, and those young Americans, blah, 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 blah. And the system doesn't give a damn. It doesn't hold people responsible, but a lot of this crap is just lies on either side.
Okay. Drag queen story hours are a real thing, so I mean there's nothing to disbelieve about it.
Well, I think he's saying how many have like dildos there. But that, and how many are just like, it was clearly sexually explicit? Because I've asked people claiming this on Twitter to just show me one example, and they can't.
No, there's no evidence of that.
Right. Well, that's what the difference is here. Like, if you've got a guy who is dressed up as a woman and doing a comedy skit or whatever, well, that's been done on TV for a very long time. There's movie after movie after movie where they take big male stars and they dress them up as women.
To Wong Fu, thanks for everything. Sincerely, Julie Newmar, the best. You got to see it.
It's way better than Priscilla.
If they're shaking their crotch in some 5-year-old's face, that's a different story.
No, there's never been any evidence that happens at a drag queen story hour.
And the things that they'll bring up, they'll be like, look at this, it's a kid putting $1 into a G-string. You can easily find out that it wasn't at a drag queen story hour. It was just some other thing that a parent maybe made a bad choice.
Burlesque show or something.
I would agree that it was a bad idea to let your kid go there, okay? But if it's just like giving that example does not refute the existence that there can't possibly be a drag queen story hour made for kids that was appropriate for kids.
Let's talk about what happened.
I don't know if it is or not, but
okay. Well, I'm going to answer your question from earlier, Mark. So let's talk about what actually has happened in Lancaster, New Hampshire, within the last 2 weeks. Within the last week, I think. There was news that came out that a drag queen story hour had been canceled at the Lancaster Public Library. In fact, Aria, our very own Aria, has reached out now to the drag queens in question and invited them to her event at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. I believe she said they're ignoring her because these people probably would not be caught dead reading a libertarian book. But what we learned, and the reason why Aria learned who the drag queens were...
Does it really matter if they do Giving Tree or Tuttle Twins? I mean...
Well, these are arch leftists who we're talking about here. So what we learned from the...
they don't sound very brave to me.
Whatever.
They go into a government-funded building.
Sure.
The socialist building, but they won't go to a libertarian festival and do the story hour where the conservatives have said they're going to do something.
They've got ideological reasons, whatever. What we learned, though, and the reason why Aria learned who these drag queens were in the first place, because the media wasn't actually talking about who they were in the reporting on the event being canceled. There was this in-depth, I'm not going to call it news article, in-depth piece written by some conservative. The site, I believe, is called like John Stark News. It's just a blog from New Hampshire, a relatively new blog, and very, very kind of Christian conservative sounding blog. And they uncovered the dark secrets of the drag queen story hour. They were revealing the truth about what was going to plot behind what was going on in Lancaster, New Hampshire. And Bonnie and I spent the time, because it was a lengthy blog, we spent the time to read through this entire thing.
Somebody obviously wants to be thevigilantcitizen.com.
And watch all of the associated video, quote-unquote, evidence of this. And we'll talk about it coming up here. We'll talk about what we saw, the shocking drag queen plot to corrupt the children of Lancaster.
Uncovered a more devious plot.
Was that the word that they used?
Maybe not devious. It was bad. Dubious, I don't know.
It was very evil sounding the way it was written. But was it really? Well, let's talk about it coming up here. The number, I'll see if I can find the actual article. The number 603-283-6160. Hour 3 is coming up.
Free Talk Live.
We've had people call this show in the past and posit that the declaration of a national emergency essentially opens up all of the loopholes that they can utilize that have been built into the Constitution. Because as Lysander Spooner would put it, the Constitution has either been powerless to prevent this big tyrannical government that we have today.
Sure, a government far beyond the scope that our founders ever, even in the wildest dreams imagined.
Or it has authorized the government that we have today.
I can only assume that that's true. I mean, I used to be this. I can only assume that it's the Constitution that in fact authorizes all of this crap that I thought at one point was unconstitutional. And we are, as I stated, still under a level of martial law that was declared for the Civil War. everything they're doing is legal, as far as I can tell.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow. The Greek government has declared 3 days of national mourning for the victims of a migrant boat sinking. At least 78 people died after a packed fishing boat capsized about 50 miles off the coast of Greece on Wednesday. Giles Gibson has more from Rome.
As Greek authorities announced a period of mourning, search and rescue teams were still hunting for survivors. But with every hour that passes, the chances of finding people alive in the open sea get smaller and smaller. Officials say the boat, which had set off from the coast of Libya, declined assistance from the Greek Coast Guard because it was trying to reach Italy. The Greek government has previously been accused of pushing migrant boats back from its waters, though it says its policies are tough but fair.
Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been found guilty of deliberately and repeatedly misleading Parliament. The long-awaited findings were published in a report by a group of MPs over the Partygate scandal, where social gatherings were held in Downing Street during the pandemic lockdowns, as John Beaver now reports from the UK.
The report comes at the end of an investigation into the former Prime Minister's knowledge of and involvement in a number of parties that took place in Downing Street. When they happened, they were in breach of the government's own strict pandemic guidelines put in place to limit the spread of COVID-19. The recommendation to suspend Mr Johnson from Parliament for an unprecedented 90 days can't be enforced as he stepped down as an MP last week, having been given an early private copy of the report. He's called it a political assassination, a witch hunt, and has criticised the report's authors, his own Conservative Party, and current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
The head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog has visited the Zaporizhzhia power plant. Rafael Grossi's visit comes after the recent dam burst in the area and the increased counteroffensive by Ukrainian forces. The IAEA chief says the situation at the power plant is serious, but the measures are being taken to stabilise the situation. Jody Jacobs reports.
Since the start of the war, the International Atomic Energy Agency has repeatedly expressed concern about Zaporizhzhia, amid fears of a potential nuclear catastrophe, as the plant has repeatedly been caught in the crossfire. And when the Kakhovka dam collapsed last week, it added a new concern, as the water is used to cool the plant's reactors. Grossi is hoping to get clarity on some of the agency's safety concerns during his visit.
The United Nations Secretary General says he's very worried about where the world stands in its fight against climate change. Addressing the media at UN headquarters on Thursday, Antonio Guterres said countries are far off track in meeting climate promises and commitments. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the extraordinary resignation of a top Canadian official from the Chinese-led Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Bob Pickard has quit his job as the bank's communications chief, saying he had concerns over his security because of Chinese influence over the bank's activities. He joined the institution in March last year, but says he came to conclude that the bank, which supports development projects worldwide, is a tool of the Chinese government.
AIIB is a tool of the Chinese Communist Party. The AIIB, despite what it says, is basically an arm of China's Belt and Road Initiative. Why should Canada be supporting China's ambition to be the #1 world power, conquering global markets versus the United States? If the people of our country and people of other Western countries were aware of this or could see it, what I have seen, they would be outraged. We shouldn't be part of this bank. It's not serving our interests whatsoever.
Mr. Pickard made those comments from Japan. The Canadian government says it is now freezing its ties with the AIIB while it reviews Mr. Pickard's claims. The bank says they are categorically false and that no one state or political party has any say over its strategic or operational activities. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
FSN is an independent source of news for TV, radio and digital networks worldwide. You can find more of our minute-by-minute updates on Twitter. Follow us there at Feature Story. And we have a wealth of audio and video stories from our global news bureaus on Facebook. You can find us there by following Feature Story News. Stay tuned for further updates right here. But for now, that's the latest Feature Story News. William Denslow reporting.
Gourmet chef Ted Allen is here. He's the author of the new cookbook, Pretentious Foodie Bullshit, and he's going to show us how to cook some fussy little foodie dishes for you and all your asshole friends. Welcome back to the show, Ted. What sort of stupid, over-elaborate, fancy-ass meal are you going to make for us today?
We're going to cook one of the very most pretentious dishes in my cookbook. Oh. It's a stupid, trendy piece of fish coated in some kind of nut you've never heard of, served alongside a puree of baby something or other.
Oh, great!
Sounds annoying.
Let's get started.
Okay, have at it.
First, it's very important to choose the most expensive type of fish you can find for some vague environmental reason that you can then pair it back to your faux intellectual gay wad dinner party guests.
Okay.
And now I assume all these other ingredients are organic and locally sourced and all that bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
Now, what about the pureed baby turnips, Ted?
You must blanch them for 30 seconds, then you shock them in an ice bath. Peel them, then boil them again with a little sugar, thyme, and a pinch of salt.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. It is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. You can bring up anything you want to talk about. Phones are open at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Join us online anytime you want. Head over to freetalklive.com and enjoy the features you'll find there. Many things there, completely free, so please enjoy those. Once again, freetalklive.com. It's Ian here in the studio tonight.
It's Bonnie.
Well, I'm not in the studio, so am I supposed to say Mark?
Oh.
Yeah, whatever you want to do. Mark is virtually here with us from Mexico City. He sadly will not be attending the Porcupine Freedom Festival or Forkfest, but thousands of liberty-minded people will be doing the Porkfest thing starting on Monday. Forkfest is happening now at Rogers Campground, so if you can get up there, go to forkfest.party to learn more about that. The Porcupine Freedom Festival over at porcfest.com. We're talking about some of the controversies that have been surrounding this year's Porcupine Freedom Festival, and one of which was the Drag Queen Story Hour that Bonnie had announced was going to be happening, which even though it wasn't really being planned, you were just trolling people online who were defending this Maj Tour character who had threatened if anyone were to have a Drag Queen Story Hour where his community
it's on, baby.
He was going to attack them, quote unquote assault them, roll up and assault them if that happens in his so-called community, which would be Porkfest while he's attending as he's an expected speaker. And that resulted in some controversy. And now there actually is going to be not a drag queen story hour, but a tranny story hour, I think, as Aria, our co-host, has put it, because she is trans, and she, by the way, refers to herself as I think a tranny, transsexual or a tranny, and
she's used terms like she-male and stuff like that, and gotten herself kicked off of many social media sites for using terminology that many find insulting to describe oneself.
Twitter's
which
actually,
I think, is interesting. Twitter won't. I know that Twitter won't get. You won't get in trouble for using the N-word to describe yourself if you're black on Twitter. or at least at one point you wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't think you would, but you do get in trouble for using tranny to describe yourself on Twitter now.
Yes,
I even
that's right.
said, Arya, I think that the reason this got flagged is because you said tranny and mine got flagged.
Yep, that's right. So the word got out. Arya's going to be doing this thing.
What if you put a 4 instead of an A in tranny?
I don't know if that'll catch it. They might have filters for that too. But so Arya announced that she was going to be doing this event. It's going to be June 22nd, so I believe that is Thursday of next week. Yep, Thursday of next week, 3 p.m. at the Free Talk Live site, which is RV46. Even though she doesn't really care to speak to children, she is going to be having a story hour. And that is going to be, well, she actually has called it two different things. She's called it a trans story hour, and now she's calling it her own drag queen story hour, even though she would not describe herself as a drag queen. She's not interested in, that lifestyle or whatever. But apparently that's how she's now promoting it, just because that's what people know it as. But this John Stark News, quote unquote, which is basically an opinion blog from what appears to be New Hampshire, then responded to her with a link to their story from johnstarknews.substack.com and the title, How a Drag Queen Story Hour for Children that was canceled in Lancaster, New Hampshire, revealed the details behind a much more sinister plot. And there's a image that was included with this particular story that is the featured image of the story. It comes up as the little preview image. And when I saw this image, I immediately thought, okay, the conservatives made this. Because there is just no way that the people who are actually promoting the Drag Queen Story Hour in Lancaster, which was canceled, actually used this particular image. And let me describe this as best I can, considering the fact that we are on broadcast radio. It says, welcome. And by the way, the design is absolutely terrible. Likely, liberal would have a decent graphic designer. Even though they say liberals can't meme, the conservatives can't do graphic design like the leftists can. Welcome, Emoji Nightmare and Katniss Everqueer, to the Lancaster Public Library to read to our children and read to our.
Hold on, before we go on, is that really the name of these people?
Yes, those are their stage names. So, to the Lancaster Public Library to read to our children. Children is underscored and read to our children is in bold, and there's an exclamation. So that alone, that sort of exclamatory.
Right, the way that it's, the way that it's set up is clearly not a leftist. I mean, leftists wouldn't say that.
No. So clearly it's already conservative, but the imagery they include here there's one with two drag queens. Now, maybe it's the actual queens in question or one of the queens in question mimicking a sex act in a bed with one another, and the rest are less explicit. But there's that image. And then they say, a big thanks for organizing to White Mountains Pride and to WMP's local sponsors. And then they put the images of the companies like Exile Burrito in Berlin and the United Way and a local bank, people that are sponsoring this. And then in small print, it says, be sure to visit emojinightmare.com for great blank dumpster merchandise. And I'm not saying the word that comes before the word dumpster, but it's in the flyer, okay? So I'm not saying it because we're on broadcast radio, and it probably would not be acceptable to say that. But that was the second, if the first factors weren't enough to prove to you that this wasn't a real flyer that they had scanned in, the fact that they're advertising blank dumpster merchandise on this flyer is obviously this was not a flyer that was promoting an event for children, right? And so just to confirm my suspicions, I did a Google image search on this particular image, and guess what? It was only posted 2 times, according to Google, and it was posted both on Facebook, both by conservative people who were all up in arms about this particular event happening.
I think it was made by the John Stark guy.
I suspect it was made by the John Stark guy. If not, he found it from one of his conservative website buddies, and he put it on his...
I think he made it.
I think everybody's been caught by... I'm sorry.
I just think that the other person was reposting it, like already enraged about it as a conservative without having figured out where it came from, like Ian did.
Yeah, I think the people who were posting it probably thought that it was made by the original posters, but
right. And I've been fooled by fake news before, but it just kind of goes to show the credulity or lack thereof of these people. And like, really, I mean, would they say this? Our children? I mean, that sounds a little much.
They're looking to cause outrage about an event that is relatively tame. It is not a sexual event, but they're trying to act as though it is. And I'm not going to read this whole story because, as I said, it's very lengthy. But they did a lot of research into Katniss Everqueer and Emoji Nightmare, the performers, one of whom is a drag queen. Emoji Nightmare, real name Justin Marsh, and Katniss Everqueer appears to be an actual biological female who is described as a burlesque dancer. So
can you help me out with why Katniss Everqueer and Emoji Dumpster Diver have decided to do this, and if in fact they are sponsored by the United Way and local banks?
Yes, the local sponsors are actually sponsors of this event. This is a community event put on by White Mountains Pride, which, as you probably know, Mark, different areas have different Pride festivals and things like that. This is one of those things. I'm pretty sure the Keene Pride, we were actually just looking up Keene Pride earlier today because they're advertising around town for different summer events. And so it's probably an ongoing series of Pride-related events, and this is one of many things that White Mountains Pride is likely up to. But before we get into speculating as to why this happens, I want to just call out a couple of other things here in this coverage. They have the press release about why they're canceling because they, I think essentially they were feeling threatened or whatever from these ridiculous people.
Oh, they canceled it themselves. I don't know
White Mountains Pride canceled.
I forgot that part.
Yeah.
I thought that the library canceled it because they were getting too many complaints or something.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right, Bonnie. The library canceled. The library trustees canceled it and gave the organization no options to move forward with the event. So it's because of the negativity, right, surrounding it. And so they get into the person.
But Free Talk Live did.
They get into the individual who is apparently one of the was he the co-owner of White Mountains, or I guess CEO or whatever, the White Mountains Pride. Ultimately, his name is.
Was he going to be a drag performer?
No.
In the event? See, that's the thing.
Christopher Bellis.
This guy keeps dragging in all these people who are like related in a way and showing things from their past or even present that have nothing to do with this, and saying that it's evidence of some sinister plot going on.
So here's part of the evidence. Christopher Bellis, he's one of the co-founders of White Mountains Pride, is the owner of Cranmore Inn, located in North Conway, New Hampshire, and owns the business with his homosexual partner.
Yes.
And their 2 young teenage adopted children. So he owns like a bed and breakfast inn,
and has adopted 2 kids who might otherwise have good families.
Right.
I can see why conservatives are currently reveling in their Bud Light success. Right.
Yep.
They've managed to just grab Bud Light by the throat and shake them and give Target a good kick in the knee, and they're saying, you know what, we can do this. We're going to turn America back to whatever's really great about America when whatever it is they're thinking about. Mm-hmm. And all we have to do is point out this person's behavior and that person's behavior. On one hand, I still am left with just the oddest feeling about anybody who thinks that Drag Queen Story Hour is a good idea. This is bad outreach, in my opinion. But nonetheless,
Okay, so I'll get into why parents are interested in doing this here in a moment, because they do address. They actually do, to this article's credit, they do address the content of Drag Queen Story Hours, because forever we've heard about, it's sexual. No, that's not what it is.
Well, this article has a great deal of that too.
Well, yes, but they don't say that about Drag Queen Story Hour specifically. All they do is they indict the participants in the Drag Queen Story Hour. And so one of the things that they bring up here is Katniss Everqueer, who is this not even a drag queen, she's just a burlesque performer. They bring up, what her history is, who she's worked with, and that she was in a music video called Belly Bounce. It features this woman, apparently, and we watched this video.
And from the beginning to the end.
It was hard to watch this video. There's no doubt about it. But the reason why it was hard to watch is because this video is about fat pride. and it is about fat people dancing. And that's kind of a hard thing to watch. It's like,
I really thought one of them was Melanie.
yeah, that's
there
true.
was one that I really thought was Melanie, the old host
Yeah.
from the show.
So it's a 3+ minute long, standard music video length of a bunch of people just shaking it. And the comment in this article is, above is the music video for Belly Bounce by Ms. Eves that features adults dancing sexually alongside children. And
never happened.
No, it doesn't. Now, I don't know what a conservative considers to be sexual dancing.
Probably any dancing or something nowadays.
But yes, I believe they must believe.
There are Baptists out there.
Right. I think they actually believe that any dancing is inherently sexual.
Because the ones that, the frames that did show a kid at all.
And there were very few children at all.
Yeah.
in this video.
So just to explain, every person that's dancing in this video, it's showing just a clip of them in their own home, kind of like COVID style.
It
might
was
have been
clearly
done
filmed during
COVID.
COVID or something, yeah.
It's clips they sent in of them dancing in their own home, clearly, like they're something like their own home, if not their own home.
Right.
And the ones that did have kids were like the mom holding the kid's hand and jumping up and down, and that's like
That's
it. Not twerking.
Nope.
Not anything else. You could grinding on the kid.
Right. Not
Nothing
pressing
like
their
that.
boobs against the camera or something. There was like nothing that you could consider sexual at all. It barely even qualified as dancing. I mean, they were
it
moving
was
their
literally
body.
just jumping up and down to show
Right.
that your belly bounces.
Yeah. And so I mean, that is just the extent of this article. It's so alarmist, and it just expects the reader to take it at its word. How many of the readers actually watch this video? Yeah, they do.
This isn't a conservative thing. This is an internet thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Somebody put up a link and told me a thing happened in
Right.
there.
Must be true.
And sometimes I'll take the time to look through links. I really do hate the whole social media, here's some required reading and then you can have a conversation with me thing. But at the same time, I also hate the I have an idea that something occurred, here's a link, and then I'll tell you about what it is that I think the link contains. Like this isn't even close to a footnote. I'm not even sure this is any kind of a credit at all.
Yeah. So then they do actually post a link to video of the woman giving a burlesque show, and she is behaving in a sexual manner. She's doing some stripping, and people are nuzzling her breasts and things
There's
like that.
There's a lot of as disgusting as that sounds with that fat lady. There's a lot of comedians who will do family-friendly shows and then do not family-friendly.
And
Absolutely.
that's exactly
Bob
what this
Saget.
is. There's no video. I mean, there's lots of angles of the crowd in this video, and there's no kids there that you can see. And
Right.
just saying that because someone does non-family-friendly shows means that they are incapable of doing a family-friendly
No.
one is so stupid.
Yeah, and I mean, Bob Saget's got to be a perfect example of this, right? He
He's
was
dead.
the guy. He's dead now, but he was the guy who was the dad on Full House. I mean, anybody who was around in the 90s and the 80s knows this guy was
Right,
like...
he's a dad.
He's
by
the,
that standard.
He's like Bill Cosby. Well, it's probably a bad example too. He is.
But I mean, Bill Cosby's content is as family friendly as it gets.
Yeah, that's true.
Like people can't
but
use.
Saget's
they
wasn't.
can't use their brains.
But that's the point, though. Saget's wasn't. He had a division. He had the family-friendly stuff. He was on America's Funniest Home Videos. He was the dad on Full House. But then he was also a very ribald, like offensive, crass comedian. I when I finally saw him in what was the movie? There was a movie with Dave Chappelle in it about getting high in the late 1990s, and I'm sorry I'm not remembering the name of it. Neither are you
there
guys.
was another movie he was in called, I think, the Respectables or something, where it was just comedians telling the
with Penn and
world's
Teller.
most disgusting joke.
Yep.
And it was, I mean,
it's
he did a
really
really
gross.
good job of telling the world's
gross
most
joke.
disgusting
No, he
joke.
doesn't. It's not even funny. It's gross.
Yeah, and
It
when
is.
I found out he was actually like an X-rated comic, I was shocked because it wasn't his personality. Like, it wasn't the one he was generally showing on normal broadcast television. But it just goes to show you can have a dividing line. The average kids watching the Full House
I watched it all the time as
would
a
have had
kid.
no idea.
Yeah.
Would have had no idea. So anyway, that's the sort of the gist of this particular story. They do get into the actual content later on about what books are being read at these drag queen story hours, and they do have a full-on video showing Emoji Nightmare at a drag queen story hour. So we're not speculating here, right? We have evidence in this case. And shock and surprise, the books they're reading are indeed books about being a different person, right? So here's the title of one of them, When Aiden Became a Brother by Kyle Lukoff. Okay, so this is clearly a, trans-friendly kids book, right? This is the kind of thing you would expect that might be read at a drag queen story hour. Okay, so that's the scandal here, folks.
Hold on. I just want to be clear as to what I'm hearing as far as a book. This is not a book about becoming trans. This is a book about how people have different roles within their lives.
No, it is a book about becoming trans.
Changing who you are.
Aiden used to be a girl and now became a brother instead of a sister.
Yep.
Okay.
So this is why people go to these drag queen story hours.
Aiden
Mark?
can be very easily a boy's name. So Aiden.
I think they're using the boy's name. I
that?
think they're using the boy's name. They're just not saying when Sherry became an Aiden. They're using the boy's name. And that did confuse me too when I first heard it.
Okay, but this leads to the reasoning why people bring their kids to these events. It's because not all families have the same set of values. And I know that conservatives really want to force their values down everybody's throat, but some families are more open-minded about these sorts of things, and they want their kids to have that same open-mindedness that they had. And so their thought is, well, let's take them to meet a drag queen. Let's take them to meet people who are different from them. Let's take them to this event where they can learn about these people who are different from them and learn about tolerating and accepting these people who are different from them. That is the reason.
It took me 2 seconds to find an example of a Berenstain Bears book that does almost the same thing from 1962. I just typed in Berenstain Bears book titles, and I got He Bear, She Bear. It says the infamous Berenstain Bears book talks about the controversial issue of gender roles.
Huh.
Oh, 1974.
I don't know that that's trans. I mean, it's gender roles, right?
No, I'm not saying that it is about being trans. I'm saying that it's you want to explain something to your kids and they're going to see it. And that doesn't mean that it says the book explains that a male or female can be whatever they want to be and are not restricted to a particular job just because of their gender. There's an example of something you would read to your kid.
That would have been controversial at the time.
And it says it was controversial at the time. Well, it says that.
It might have been controversial at the time. It doesn't seem controversial to me. To the idea that you say, Mama, there's no reason that Mama Bear has to cook your food for you every time. Papa Bear could do it too, or you could get your little bear butt up and do it yourself.
Well, you weren't even a glimmer in your mother's eye when this book came out.
No, he was. I said 1974. 1974.
Oh, I thought you said it was in the 60s.
At first I thought it was 60s because the first one was written in 62 apparently, but I don't know why I mixed it up. But anyways, my point I'm trying to make
the
is...
egg existed?
It did.
I've never heard that comeback. That's a good one.
Your eggs existed, or you existed even in your grandma, because
Really?
All of your
Hold on.
Mom's,
this sounds like a bold statement. Go on.
All of your mom's DNA existed in the egg that was in your mom, so including her eggs. I know that sounds crazy. I learned that one day and I was like, that doesn't even make sense.
Wait, all of her DNA?
The egg itself didn't exist.
Couldn't be all of her DNA, right?
Maybe I'm explaining it wrong.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have
must
to
be
look at
picking
it.
up some from the father. Let's go to the phones here. We got let's see, Perry's on the line in California. Go ahead, Perry.
Yes. Thank you very much. I've leaned libertarian for over 40 years.
Okay.
And I am a Christian constitutional conservative, and I know quite a few constitutional conservatives that are not against gay people at all.
Okay.
We believe in live and let live.
Great.
And this the thing is what they've managed to do over the years is like the Democrats say, oh, we're the ones that are friendly with the gay people, so you got to vote for us. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And actually, there's a lot of really smart gay people and trans people that are conservatives. They're extremely smart. They see through all this nonsense.
Sure.
and they don't want big government and big spending and all this craziness. That's
there are those people. But Perry, of course, one of the problems.
Thank God for him. Thank God for him.
Perry, I want you to hang on. I want to give you a chance to express your full thoughts here. So stand by. We're going to bring you back here in just a moment. But the number, by the way, is 603-283-6160 if you want to join us. And I'm glad Perry is on the line with us. But the conservatives have screwed it up, just like they screwed up with the immigrants. They could have had a lot of people on their side. And there's just so many conservatives who hate, push away. That seems to be what conservatives are towards these people. I'm glad there's people like Perry out there. We'll talk to more of him in a moment.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real life. Go ahead and have a watch, and if it's been a while, have another look. I guarantee you'll notice things now that you didn't notice before. And the best part is that you're going to walk away feeling a renewed sense of your own power. You are the master of your destiny, and you will be free in your lifetime. Victimless Crime Spree.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. The head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog has visited the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant on Thursday in Ukraine. Rafael Mariano Grossi's visit comes after the recent dam burst in the area and the increased counteroffensive by Ukrainian forces. FSN's Jody Jacobs has more.
Following the increased conflict in Ukraine, there are heightened fears for the safety of Europe's largest nuclear power facility. Earlier this week, Grossi met with Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky, discussing concerns about the facility, which is under Russian control. Since the start of the war, the International Atomic Energy Agency has repeatedly expressed concern about Zaporizhia, amid fears of a potential nuclear catastrophe, as the plant has repeatedly been caught in the crossfire. And when the Kakhovka Dam collapsed last week, it added a new concern, as the water is used to cool the plant's reactors. Grossi is hoping to get clarity on some of the agency's safety concerns during his visit. Jody Jacobs, New York.
Miami's Mayor Francis Suarez has publicly declared his bid for President of the U.S., becoming the 13th Republican candidate and the third Floridian to join the race. The 45-year-old enters a crowded field still led by the now twice indicted former President Donald Trump. FSN's Benji Heyer has more.
My dad taught me that you get to choose your battles, and I am choosing the biggest one of my life.
Francis Suarez, Miami political royalty. His father, Xavier, was the city's first Cuban-born mayor, serving 2 stints in office. Francis was then elected himself in 2017 and again in 2021, both landslide victories. But he faces an uphill challenge to make it to the White House. He's less well known nationally compared to other potential nominees, and he freely admits not voting for Republican frontrunner Donald Trump in either 2016 or 2020. And he says he's also voted against Ron DeSantis, Florida's governor, popular in the state, and another rival seeking the presidency. Benji Heyer, Washington, D.C.
U.S. stocks soared Thursday as investors continued to react to the Federal Reserve's decision to leave interest rates untouched. The Fed has been raising rates for over a year, but Wednesday announced it's taking a wait-and-see approach in its fight to lower inflation. FSN's William Denzela reports from New York.
The Federal Reserve's decision to leave interest rates unchanged fueled hopes on Wall Street that the central bank's cycle of rate hikes might be nearing an end. The Dow closed Thursday up 1.3%, with both the S&P and Nasdaq up 1.2%.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us here if you want to jump on. You can actually only get in right now through our SIP line at sip.freetalklive.com. All the phone lines are completely full for the first time in the whole show. You can go to sip.freetalklive.com, sip.freetalklive.com. Super important person. That's not what it really stands for, but it's a pretty cool idea. Anyway, it makes it so you can call us from anywhere in the world for no cost whatsoever, unless you're paying like for every megabyte of data that you use. So sip.freetalklive.com as we go to your calls and thoughts. We have Perry on the line. Perry, you were saying that you consider yourself to be a conservative, but you actually are tolerant towards others, which is a strange thing to say.
Well, of course, the thing is that Americans, we have to accept one another, even if we're a different race we're the melting pot of the world in many ways, and in order for us to stay strong and not fall, one of the things, there's a lot of things that we need to do in order to do that. But what I'm saying is, like, I don't care if you're Mexican, black, Chinese, we all need to work together to make America, like Trump says, the greatest country. He by the way, I believe there'll be gay people voting for Trump because they want their families to prosper too. They don't want to be poor and end up penniless. So, but anyways, what I wanted to mention real quick is like males that go into sports, like women's sports. I'm against that, because they're stronger. They're a lot stronger, and I'm
against that, but I don't think there needs to be a law about it, right? Like, let the sports leagues decide.
Right, that's fine. But like if you're under a certain age, like 21, whatever, I don't believe in operations on children. I'm against that 100%.
Well, what age does it start? You did say 21.
To me,
you did say that, yeah.
Well, I think at a certain age, maybe if they really made up their mind because some of these people have changed their minds over the years, and then they weren't really happy with what they did, and it's just I don't know.
I agree with you, but I don't want to protect them.
It just scares me.
I think that people need to be responsible for their actions. I think they need to deal with the consequences of those actions, and if you're going out there and taking weird, hormones or chopping off your junk, whatever it is you're doing, you're responsible for that action.
But I think most people out there would say, yeah, but not a child, right, Mark? I think that the main point is
be a child. Well, I think it's an interesting question as to what age.
That doesn't answer what age. Exactly. I think the answer is whatever the parent thinks that child is, because the parent's the person that knows them the best, or should be, whatever the parent or guardian thinks.
And that's where most conservatives cannot handle leaving people alone.
You guys are falling into the trap. Most of the sexual... Hold on, wait. Most of the sexual reassignment surgeries, and I'm not talking about 51%, I'm talking about the vast majority of sexual reassignment surgeries that happen before the age of 18 are done with the parents' consent, and they are done to children who have ambiguous sexual organs. So if we want to argue this point, this is a really important... This is the lies conservatives tell.
What does that have to do with falling into a trap?
If you're discussing this as though parents, the most of the sexual reassignment surgeries that are happening to young people out there are from parents who want their kids. I just can't wait for little Billy to be little Susie.
I wasn't saying that at all.
I never meant that.
That's not what's happening.
I wasn't saying that.
What's happening? Well, this is important though.
Okay.
Like the vast majority of these operations that have occurred in the past, the vast majority of them that get counted and thrown around on social media are simply kids who have like weird sexual organs that are getting, stitched back together in a better, more normal way.
Okay. I really don't care about that.
All I was saying was if it's happening, what should the government decide? I think nothing, and I think that the parents should do it. I tend to agree that most parents would say not until you are pretty old, like at least 18, and the parent has no possible way of controlling the human being anymore. But also don't think that somebody should get thrown in jail if they think my 15-year-old knows they're a girl. But I don't think that happens often. And
but it's the conservatives who want you to believe that, oh my God, we've got to have a law to stop parents from doing the things that they want to do with operations with their kids, even though, of course, there's also plenty of conservative parents who genitally mutilate their sons and don't think a single...
At age 3 days.
Yeah, don't think a single thing of it. So it's like, just leave people alone, okay? Let families make their own decisions.
Because as soon as you get to tell other parents how they're going to raise their kids, they get to tell you. If a government is big enough to tell some parents how to live, it's big enough to tell you how to live.
Perry, any other thoughts you want to share tonight?
Just a couple more real quick. You had mentioned something about comedians a while ago. The only thing I would suggest is, in my case, I know they've been doing this for a few years now, but the foul language in these, like Don Rickles was great, okay? But some of these newer ones that you found, I think,
like Richard Simmons, Richard Pryor.
Richard Pryor was great. I mean, that one that he did with about the mob, you can look it up on your phone about the mob. It's really funny. No, he was great. But I'm talking about some of the ones they use. It seems like every other word is a bad language. You know, it's ridiculous. It's
I don't know, man. I don't know who these comedians are.
I think that the Bob Saget most offensive joke ever told is like really gross and terrible, and I don't find it funny at all. But I think that there's a way to use foul language that does add something and makes it funnier, like Phil Hendry.
Here's the thing: don't go to the show. I mean, if there's something offensive going on, then just don't give them your money. Hey, thanks, Perry, for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you.
But I think that you can call in Free Talk Live and say, hey, I'm not going to give my money to X comedian because that comedian uses foul language.
But he didn't even know. I mean, he didn't have a specific example. I mean, maybe those comedians exist, but I don't know who they are.
They use foul language?
Their names are Richard Pryor, right?
Well, right, Andrew Dice Clay, but I'm thinking...
Watch these people, that every other word is absolutely bad.
But he's acting like it's happening now with new comedians, and maybe it is.
Dave Chappelle is pretty... has
not every other word. It isn't every other word coming out of his mouth.
I don't think he literally meant every second word.
Well, yeah, because if you're cursing that often, you can't even put a sentence together.
Yeah, I don't think that's what the caller meant.
Well, say what you mean then. Let's go to Ricky. He's in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Go ahead, Ricky.
Thank you there, Brother Ian, Brother Mark, Miss Bonnie. Good evening.
What's on your mind?
Well, I kind of touched on this briefly with the captain, but I'm going to go into it a little more effectively tonight. And that's, back in 2017, there was a memorandum here in PA. And it was an important one. I will say, just for the record, because I mentioned it recently, when I went for this memorandum...
Anything with the word memorandum at the top doesn't sound important to me.
Well, it's certainly not interesting.
Not libertarian.
How about abolishing school taxes? Isn't that important?
Sure. Did they actually do that?
Okay. Well, huh?
They didn't do that, though.
Well, if I may, are you going to talk for me, Ian, or are you going to let me talk
Let's hear it.
All right. Well, I was done up in my hat, my duster, my Southern Cross, all that stuff when I went to vote.
Do you have like a white cane to get around with?
Huh?
Do you have a white cane to get around with?
Well, I used one even then, but I definitely use one now, Brother Mark.
Is that like a pimp cane, Mark, that you're describing?
No, it's a blind person cane.
Oh, okay.
Of course I do. I do. What the hell are you talking about, Mark?
I was curious.
No offense.
All right, what about it, dude? You went to an event, to a meeting about getting rid of school tax?
We went. It's a memorandum. That's how you make laws, Brother Ian. So
No.
What happened was, huh?
No, I don't know that. I've never heard of that. That must be a Pennsylvania
thing.
thing.
Don't do it in New Hampshire, but we do. Same thing with medical marijuana. That's how you make laws here in PA.
All right.
Anyways, so of course it was yes. Now here's what happened. Now believe
What was
me,
yes?
Huh?
What was yes?
To abolish it. Is this hard or something?
School taxes?
Okay, a memorandum is generally, when I hear the word memorandum, I think a really boring letter, some sort of legal document that some lawyer...
You go into a voting machine and it says, do you want to do this? Should we do this or should we do that? That's how we make
Okay,
our
they
law.
held a vote. Okay, that to me is not what a memorandum is, but apparently...
But you're thinking about votes in states. He's talking about memorandums in commonwealths.
In commonwealths, right.
Get it right.
Yeah, it's like you speak a different language, Ricky. You have to remember when you're speaking a different language. No, he just yelled my name, I think. When you're speaking a different language, you got to remember people don't understand. So you said they held a vote. People voted to get rid of the school tax. All right.
Right. Now, here's what happened. Now, of course, they intended to do just that. But what ended up happening, and don't cut me off because there's a little more to this. Now, unfortunately, somebody within the school system found something in our Constitution, and they were only able to abolish half of it. Now, I'm going to tell you how this resulted. Now, before the memorandum, I got property up in the mountains. Now, my property taxes were a little bit over 100, and that's still that way to this day. Now, the school taxes, mind you, were around $2,000. Now, when this went through, now, unfortunately, the school screwed it up, and there's still people trying to figure out how to fix this so we can wipe it out entirely. It went down to $1,000, but it got even better. See, previously, before this, we had something called the Homestead Act. Now, that went by township. In the township where I have my property, that's an extra $615 off.
Okay.
You know? Now, I'll try to find out in the future exactly what it was that they exploited.
So what did they do, Ricky? Did they actually try to raise that money from sales tax or whatever? Because usually cutting...
No, they cut it in half.
They cut the school budget in half in Pennsylvania.
Because somebody in the school system found something in our Constitution they exploited. I'll find out exactly what that was.
Now, is this statewide or was this just where you live?
Oh, that's state. This is all across PA, and so is the Homestead Act. It just goes by township, the amount. So that's an extra $615 off of the $1,000 it now is cut in half. They would have wiped it all out.
Well, Ricky, what this is that 49 states. New Hampshire is the only one that doesn't have it, and it's just not explicit.
Doesn't have what?
Doesn't have a provision that says that public schools must be funded, whereas New Hampshire says we cherish our seminaries and public schools.
Can you not cut him off, Ricky? Don't cut him off because there's something important that Mark is about to say. It's really important.
Okay.
Don't cut him off for the next 5 minutes.
New Hampshire's Constitution says that we cherish our public schools and seminaries. Now, the New Hampshire Supreme Court has interpreted the cherishing of public schools, which in the same sentence says we cherish seminaries. They have said that cherishing of public schools means that we must fund them. It, of course, does not mean that we must fund seminaries, but whatever the case may be, New Hampshire is the only state in the union of 50 states that does not require, in its constitution, the funding of public schools.
I did not know that. I know that the
Supreme Court has called it constitutional. Sir?
How much is the average property tax in New Hampshire?
Very high.
He wasn't saying that the government doesn't fund public schools. He was saying that our Constitution doesn't force us to. But
well, you asked what the question I thought that you were asking was, I don't know what this provision is in the Constitution. I'm telling you explicitly in 49 states that in their Constitution they say public schools must be funded by some government agency or whatever.
I was surprised to learn, Mark, that it's only New Hampshire that says that. That's
he said yours says that, Ricky. Yours and everyone except New Hampshire.
Right, yeah. Every state
That's what you were referencing without knowing what you were referencing, most likely.
Which I learned tonight. I did not know that. Thank you, Ricky, for the call tonight. I'm glad we learned that factoid. I guess factoid.
I wish we didn't have to deal with the Ricky call and just could have had just Mark explain that to us instead.
Well, I can explain a factoid to you too. A factoid is something that sounds
true, but it
sounds true, but is not.
And you're sure this is true?
I didn't know that.
You're sure this is true?
Well, hold on. I mean, I've been on the air for a long time.
It has become a little fact as well. It has become.
Yes, right. So now we're talking about different ways to define terms, right? So there's, etymological, there's historical, there's
there's usage.
Yeah, right. So there's the three different ways to define things, and factoid is used as a little fact, but is in fact sort of historically meant.
But
it's
my thing is,
gold of facts.
I've already said that I'm in between on this. Like, I believe words can, one, change, and two, that people can decide that a word just means something else altogether. But my thing is, if I've told you listen, the word you're using doesn't mean what you think it does, and you look and you see that I'm right. Why? Why not just say, let me use a different word that describes it better? Why say, well, I'm going to decide that word means what I say? Like, what's the point of words? Why don't we just say, like, blah, blah, blee, blah, 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 and expect each other to know what we're saying? Because I think that's what blee means and blah means. I
agree with you completely, Bonnie, and that's why I want you to stop calling yourself an anarchist. Because historically, anarchist means a person who believes in communism, but that doesn't have to pass through
It doesn't
socialism.
Historically. Well, further back historically, anarchist means without anarchist rulers.
Etymologically, anarchist, and I think that this is the weakest of the arguments, etymologically, anarchist is not as good of a term for libertarians because libertarians believe in self-rule, so autarchist is a superior term. And
I think Mark makes a good argument on this one.
No, but I'm not saying that. I'm not saying
And then general usage. General usage of an anarchist is basically a crazy assassin.
I'm not saying that the word can't have changed. I'm just saying Mark said historically it means, and he said something that wasn't the furthest historically accurate thing back, and I am using it to mean that way. And I've already said words can change their meanings, and I don't think that we should decide that a word means a thing based on, let's take a vote, and whoever has the opinion, or whichever opinion gets the most votes is what the word means. That's silly.
Sure, but the reality is if you are using a term when the supermajority of society thinks it means a bomb thrower to describe yourself, then you shouldn't be so surprised if someone thinks you believe in throwing bombs.
Just because it's what it makes them think of, just because it's the connotation, maybe, to most people. I'm not even going to accept that as fact. I don't know that that's true. We haven't taken a poll or something. But even if it is, that doesn't mean they think that's what it means in the dictionary. They're just dumb and haven't even thought about it. If someone says anarchist, that might be what they think of first. But they would probably, if you said give them a definition. But if someone says, I'm just saying, they're not thinking of a definition. They're just stupid cattle. They're not thinking at all. So why would that affect the definition of the word? It wouldn't.
Well, everybody does have. I mean, if you go around and ask wherever you go, you don't have to do it in Keene, but wherever you go, if you were to go around and ask, what does the word anarchist mean? Somebody's got a definition for you. Is it a good definition? It probably isn't, Bonnie, and I'm willing to give you that. However, if you go around and ask the same people, what is a voluntarist? They may attempt to define the word using the term voluntary. They will probably come up with people who volunteer to do things as opposed to people doing things voluntarily. But regardless of the fact, you have a much better scenario defining a term that people do not think that they have a definition for than to redefine a term that they already have a definition for, especially if that definition is highly negative.
Okay, well, you're assuming that my intention by using the word...
I was just bringing it up because you were talking about definitions and you were making my point, and then I switched it around.
No, you were not making... I was making my point. That I never said that means that you can use a word and find out that it doesn't mean what you think it means and keep using it. That's what you think about the word libertine, and that's not what I said at all. I said that I know what anarchist means, and because people don't know what it means doesn't mean I'm going to change what it means. And my intention is not to make people think, oh, I just want to have a good outward appearance. I don't care. I'm already unemployable.
Well,
that's what Cantwell said too.
Yeah, some of us want to persuade.
What's this obsession with comparing me to Cantwell? I don't understand.
He said it. He literally said, I am unemployable on Free Talk Live because
I didn't know that. I've never listened to his episode.
You're becoming Cantwell.
I am not Jay Freeville, nor am I many of our other, autistic savants out there that can whip up what episode it occurred on. But
I think that if we're talking about persuading people, which Bonnie, you have said is important to you because you've had long fights with Dennis Pratt online about whether or not people can be persuaded. If you want to persuade people, then you probably shouldn't put yourself in the camp of bomb throwers in their mind before you try to keep talking to them, because many of them aren't even going to keep talking to you after that. They're just going to say, oh, you're crazy, and they're going to walk away. Whereas if you say...
I've had it happen to me.
Yeah, whereas if you say, I'm a voluntarist, they might actually say, oh, well, what's that?
Somebody that stupid isn't somebody I'm trying to convince.
I'm
not trying
stupid,
to change
Bonnie.
the entire world.
Ignorance.
Yes, it is. It's stupid.
This is a problem that Mark has had for a long time, where he thinks people are stupid instead of ignorant, and you share this with him.
Ignorant means that you do not have the information in front of you. Nescient means that you have the information. No, ignorant means that you have the information available to you, but you're not using it and you're stupid. That's stupid, and every human being in America is freaking stupid.
No, that's not true.
Almost every single one.
Most people
except
are
like
ignorant.
a tiny
Ignorance
minority.
is something that you can change. Stupidity is something that you generally cannot change. People who are ignorant about voluntarism, they're also ignorant about anarchism, but they don't know. They have information that is inappropriate about anarchism that has programmed them to be hostile towards it, whereas they are not hostile towards voluntarism because they have no misinformation about voluntarism, so therefore they have no ignorance about it.
Well,
Ignorance
unless they
can be
Google
cured.
voluntarism and Ian Freeman pops up.
And I would, I think
does that
that the
have to do
best,
with
the one I like the most is why not use the term auto-archist? Like, this is literally the single best term to describe what it is we're talking about, because etymologically you can somebody who understands etymology, they can say auto, that meaning self, archist, self-rule. You're talking about self-rule.
Yeah, I like
right
it.
Now, I don't use this term because I think that every given space is going to have a set of rules and people opt into it. I prefer terms like polycentric law and things like that. But, forget about it. Auto-archist is just much better term, unless you like drawing anarchy A's, in which case you are on the side of the, young, poorly shaven punks and their feminist girlfriends that peg them.
Well, I would like to challenge another thing that Ian said, because I don't think that being able to change how stupid you are makes you, not you, Ian, but a person being able to change how stupid they are. Oh, that means and not doing it means, oh, you're not stupid because you could change. I think it makes them stupider. You have the ability to change how stupid you are, and you eat Cheetos and watch Fox News or CNN all day. That makes you stupider.
No, I don't think you can do that.
I think that you are in a state of being stupid because you do not read. And that is what 99.999% of America is right now. They're stupid. And I'm not saying that I think that. I'm saying that I know that, because most people don't educate themselves at all. They think that public school already educated them. Now that they can go work at Walmart, come home and eat Cheetos, then watch the latest
a stupid person is someone who is not
movie.
Intelligent. That's what a stupid person is.
Yeah, you're not intelligent because you haven't educated yourself. People who are not people who don't read are unintelligent.
You're slow-minded. You cannot get fast-minded. You're born that way. I think you're stuck that way.
Well, let's see what dictionary.com says stupid means.
You can definitely speed up your thought process using paracetam. Oh, how do you find out about that?
You're not going to make yourself smart just by taking a
doing that
drug.
and reading.
Word of the day, Snollygoster.
I think there's a huge difference between ignorance and stupidity, and people are kept ignorant. They're kept in the dark. They're kept from information that could change their mind.
You can be ignorant and intelligent. You can be ignorant of some facts, even though you're an intelligent person.
Every intelligent person is ignorant.
But
I agree with that statement.
You're correct. You can be ignorant and intelligent, and you can be ignorant and stupid.
And 99.999% of these people, no, you
cannot
can.
Cure it.
Yes, you can. If you're stupid and you're like, I want to get smarter, you can get smarter. I don't believe this. Like, oh, it's just something they can't change about themselves. It's just because they're stupid. They're born stupid. That's something that people's teachers tell them to hold them down, and their parents tell them to hold them down. I think anyone who isn't actually retarded, which is a medical term, can get less stupid.
I like what your definition of stupid is better than the definition of stupid. You're using stupid to describe somebody who is willfully ignorant on a topic and continues to be willfully ignorant even when presented with evidence to the contrary. And I think it's because, for the same reason you use the word anarchist, is because you like the word. Because stupid doesn't mean that. Now I like your definition better.
The definition he read does mean what I'm saying. He's just trying to say
I didn't even read the definition. Lacking ordinary quickness and keenness of mind, slow-witted. That's what a stupid person is.
I think that a person who's lacking ordinary quickness of mind
if they
can
are those
gain
things, you shouldn't call them stupid, because that's just insulting stupid people. You shouldn't do that.
Hey, if you didn't get on the air tonight, and there's a few people that didn't, apologies. You should call earlier in the night, and we'll do our best to get you on tomorrow. We are expecting to be live tomorrow night as
Everyone's just as intelligent as everyone else.
No, that's not true.
Love you,
we'll see you tomorrow night. FreeTalkLive.com. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes to vote on. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by the Treasury. In fact, that's exactly how we got this sponsorship. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first, nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should